On everybody, good morning. Great to see everybody again. I see you guys piling in on all three live streams. Outstanding. All right. Met a ton of you guys yesterday. Um, there was a ton of consultations, and I tend to be on initial consultations personally, so I met a whole lot of you guys in initial consultations yesterday. You guys have really, really great ideas, great plans for your family's future and your structuring for generational wealth. I love it, actually. Yesterday was actually a really inspiring day. The amount of people who were ready to get it going for their family was, quite frankly, incredibly inspiring. So I appreciate you guys for that. It keeps my faith alive in the human race and in the community in general at large. So thank you guys for that. Moving forward today, I'll get into some of what I spoke to those guys in those consultations yesterday about, which a lot of folks, their primary concern is after relocation, how do you take care of yourself, right? How do you take care of yourself financially? How do you pay your bills, so on and so forth, right? So, our working definition of being rich has always been that your passive income is greater than your burn rate, right? So your passive income is greater than the expenses per cycle, whatever that cycle is. We typically use a month. So the amount of passive, not active income, passive income that you make in a month is greater than the amount of money that you spend on your necessities in that month. Okay, that's always the way that we've looked at it, and we always look for ways to take care of that. And typically, it's been hard, right? It's something that if people could just have passive income, just a check showing up in the mail, paying all their bills every month, everybody would do it, right? Without having to work, right? And so it's typically very hard. We've been really lucky the last 2 years, going on our third year now. We've been really lucky to be in a position where it's easy, right? Now you got to be able to afford it. That might be the hard part, depending on who you are. But the folks that I'm talking to that can afford it, it's super easy at that point. What we've had access to for the last, going on 3 years now, has been extraordinary bond rates here in Kenya, right? So the highest bond rate was a 19% ROI on a bond, right? So sovereign debt bonds are typically the safest investment vehicle. But because of that, they typically offer the lowest return because the safer the investment, the lower the return, the riskier the investment, the higher the potential of return, right? So bonds are, slightly riskier than CDs, right? And that's arguable. Some people would actually say a CD is riskier than a bond because it's easier for a bank to go bankrupt and shut down than it is for a country to disappear, right? So in order for a sovereign debt bond to default, the country would essentially have to disappear and then default, right? But for a bank, it could close any day. So some people actually say bonds are safer than CDs. So it's arguable within the investment community, right? But super safe nonetheless. And so because it's super safe, normally its interest rates are really low because it's just guaranteed money, right? So your big, wealth funds and all that typically invest in bonds, your BlackRocks, your Vanguards, and all of that. This is a way to have some stable income trickling in and diversify their portfolio for what they call capital preservation, right? To try and make sure that their money is preserved that they're investing. All right, fine. Here, we've been getting bonds. The highest one was 19 plus percent, right? Which is crazy, right? And the lowest one we've seen has been 11%. The S&P 500 historically grows at 10% a year, little over 10% a year. So the lowest bond that we've been looking at has been a greater return on investment than the U.S. S&P 500 historically. We're not talking about during the Trump era or anything like that. I'm talking about the last 40 years. The S&P 500 has grown at a historic rate of about 10% a year, right? So historically, no matter who was president, no matter whether it was a golden age, of the internet in the 80s, no, it doesn't matter, right? These bonds are giving return on investment higher than the S&P 500, okay? That's incredible, and it will not last. But because that's been happening for the last 3 years, we've been able to ladder those bonds so that those bonds give a payout every month, which allows folks to relocate and instantly have passive income that's higher than their burn through rate, right? Which is our definition of rich. So it allows for us to relocate folks and have them be instantaneously rich as soon as they arrive, right? All of their bills are taken care of. All of their basic needs are taken care of with monthly checks that are guaranteed by the government. Some of our folks, that guarantee is 20 years, right? Right now, the bond that's available right now, there's always two available, typically. Sometimes there's three. There's always two available. Right now, both of them are over 10 years long. One of them is 14%. I believe the other one is 12%, right? And so those are the types of numbers that we're dealing with, right? Let me show you, if I can here, what that looks like. I can show you on YouTube, and I can show you on TikTok. Unfortunately, you guys on Facebook, I can't do the green screen picture thing on Facebook, so you're just gonna have to follow along. But there you go. All right, so it's up on TikTok on my background and on YouTube on my background. You should be able to see it as well. All right, so these are the two bonds that I'm talking about. These are available now. So as you can see, the one on the left here, it's 12.873% ROI. There's a 10% withholding tax that comes out of the payment. You don't have to pay that to anybody. And there's 13.2 years left to maturity on it. All right. It was a 20-year bond when it first came out as a reopen. This one on this side, on my right side, is 14.188% return on investment. There's another 10% withholding tax. Again, that comes out automatically. You don't have to pay anybody that withholding tax. If my finger's like not pointing at it, it's because it's in a different place on the YouTube green screen than it is on the TikTok green screen. All right. And so there's 21 years left on this one, right? So at 14%, our typical minimum buy-in on these guys. Now, the minimum, as you can see here, is 50,000 local currency. 50,000 local currency is like $400. Okay, but that's not going to pay your bills, right? So, in order to do the bond laddering that actually pays your bills when you live here, we do a minimum of 1 million local currency. Okay, you can think about that as $10,000. Okay, and so at that, if you're on the longer one over here, 1 million would pay out this number, this exact ROI number. It'd be 141,880 per year, right? Because it's a million, so it's super easy math, right? On this side, with this number, it's 128,730 a year, right? So you cut that in half, right? So it's about 70,000 a month. Our target is 50,000 a month. No one gets 50,000 a month. Everybody is making more than 50,000 a month, right? So our target in local currency is that 50,000 a month. Most of our clients that are coming over are Americans. So what that means to an American is put up $75,000 and you don't have to work for the next 10 years. That's what it means, essentially, right? So that's what we've been able to accomplish while these bond rates are crazy, right? That's not going to be forever. Eventually, the demand for liquidity is going to go down, and when that happens, the bond rates are going to go down. The bond, return on investment is going to go down as well, right? And maybe stocks will go up, but definitely bonds will go down. So this is not something that's going to last forever. This is something that has been something that we could access for the last 2 years. This is the third year. And like last year, February, the rate on that bond was 18.46%. That's crazy. It's almost 20%. The highest rate has been 19. I can't even remember, the minor digits, but it was 19 plus percent. Okay, that's nuts. That's nuts. If you know how the rule of 72 works, then you know that with those kind of numbers, you're talking about your money doubling every 3 or 4 years, depending on which number we're talking about. That is crazy, right? So if you put, $10,000 there, you're talking about in 4 years, it's 20,000, right? And then 4 years after that, the 20,000 is now 40,000 if you're compounding, right? Crazy numbers. But that's only because we're working with a developing nation that's building out all its nationwide infrastructure right now. So there's a demand for liquidity, and inside that demand, the bond rates are going to go up. Right, something that essentially only happens, you know, in a situation where the country is developing. All right, so 75K USD will allow you not to work for 10 or 20 years in shillings. Yeah, yeah, because what'll end up happening is, and it depends on number one, how much your burn rate is, right? So we got it. That's our base. We use this as a base. The reason that we use this as a base is because what it's going to pay you out is a minimum of 50,000 Kenyan shillings a month, right? And then you're going to get your premium back, and you may get it back in tranches. So there's that, but you're going to get your premium back, your principal investment amount, as the time goes on. So now, for example, for me, I have a full house staff. I have a farm. We have this place here as well. This is not the farm. You'll start seeing the farm probably in about a month and all of that. And I have a couple cars. I got insurance to pay on all my employees and myself and my new baby and the whole nine, right? So I got bills. I got adult bills, right? I don't spend 100,000 shillings a month, right? And paying all that payroll and all of that, I don't spend 100,000 shillings a month. So someone who like has a maid, like that's, and a lot of our folks, that's like they have a maid and that's it, right? So they got their stuff going on and they got a maid at the house, maybe a security guard or something like that at the gate, to their compound or whatever, right? So if that's all they got, they shouldn't be spending more than 50,000, right? Now their setup costs might be more, right? Like if you're like, okay, I'm going to build a house, I'm going to have my house set up, and then after I have my house set up, I need to buy furniture and I need to buy a microwave and I need, you know what I mean? So like that, like move-in fee, that first month or two might be like, oh, okay, we spent 150,000 first month, another 100,000 the second month, but now we're cool. Now we're just paying our bills and buying our food and got our insurance going and putting gas in the car and all of that. Now it's normal again, right? So now that it's normal again, okay, now where are we at, right? And so that's where people start falling into that, like, okay, now we're settling in the 50,000 a month, right? And again, the only way to get 50,000 a month is that the interest rate would have to be 10%. As you can see, none of these interest rates are even close to 10%, but we target that as a matter of managing expectations, right? Just so that it's not like, oh, okay, we're gonna shoot for 70, which is this number, 70,000 a month, and then you get 62. Then you're like, I'm supposed to get 70, right? So our target is 50, and then from that 50 and that 10%, we typically exceed that target no matter what, right? So people are pleasantly surprised by what actually ends up in their bank account. So in that situation, your burn rate, right, the amount you're spending monthly is lower than your passive income, right? The bond income is passive income, right? And the taxes are already paid on them. You don't have to worry about, the tax bill. So your passive income is then it exceeds your burn rate. You can still work if you have a remote job or something like that, or if you own a business, you can still operate your business in the U.S. The CEO doesn't have to. If it's a solid like real business, the CEO doesn't have to be there. right, for the business to work. Now, if it's a solopreneurship where you kind of own a job, not really a business, and you're doing all the work, that obviously that's different. But you might even want to look into, a deal with that where either you bring on a partner and they do the work and you collect 20% off the top and they start pocketing the other 80%, or even sell the business. Right? We get a lot of people who, like, if they own a job as a business, like they're the one doing all the work, they put it on biz buy sell, and or get a business broker, and they sell it, and that becomes part of the money that they use to come over here, right? But this isn't, it can't last forever. These rates are going to go down. So you got to move on this if this is something you want. We've been relocating people before this was possible, and we'll be relocating people after this is possible. So we had all other types of methods of getting people funded to get over here, but this by far has been the easiest one. Now, easy is always expensive. It just is what it is, right? So there's always a way to do it like no money, and that's always hard. It's always ridiculously hard. The less money involved, the harder it typically is. So this is like a, hey, if you got the money, in an account, in a savings account, in a Roth IRA, where because with the Roth IRA you can remove your contributions with no penalty. It's only the added money, right? So it's only the money that the account has made in interest and all of that that has a penalty attached to it. So we have a lot of people with Roth accounts, whether it's IRA or 401k, pull their contributions, not the investment amount, and not have to pay anything on that. We got folks that are like, wait a minute, that says 14%. The penalty for taking the money out the 401k is 10%. So I'm making 4%. I'll pay that. Right? So there's people just do basic math and they're like, I'll just pay the penalty, and they just pull it. So there's all kind of places where people, get the money to do it. But that gets you over here at a burn rate that's higher than or at a passive income rate that's higher than your burn rate, which is what you want. That's what we consider rich. Now, from there, you start building investments that keep investing, in themselves. That's what we consider wealthy, right? So there's two different things. Now, some people actually use this as wealth because we do generational wealth trust funds. So some people will actually bond ladder like this, but they'll put it in the trust fund and they won't spend it. It won't, cover their burn rate, and they'll let it be reinvested in the trust, and that trust compounds crazy quick, right? So we have someone who started that in 2004 or 2003, one of the two. Their trust has grown faster than some of the trusts that were started 10 years ago, right? Because they got this going on, and they are in the golden age. They got the 19% bond, they got the 18% bond, like they got all the big boys. And those bonds were tax free. They're called infrastructure bonds. So infrastructure bonds come up every now and then, and when it's an infrastructure bond, it's tax exempt. So their trust has made so much money in 3 short years, it's crazy, because the trust is getting payments every month from the government, and then the trustees are then investing those payments in different funds, different special funds, different IFTs, so on and so forth, right? So you can build wealth that way if you're going to make a wealth investment and not a relocation investment, right? And then we have our folks that get everything. They get the total package, which is they get their bond laddering going, but on top of that, they get a piece of land. On top of that, our architect designs them a house. On top of that, our general contractor builds the house. On top of that, our lawyers handle their immigration paperwork and their legal compliance. So they get here and everything is done. You know what I mean? And then the cherry on top is they get a brand new SUV. So they get here, they got a brand new car, they got a brand new house, they own their own land, they got a trust that's handling everything. They may have a company that's operating underneath the trust, depending on what it is they're doing and how it is they're set up. And then they got a payment coming in every month, taking care of their basic expenses, right? So that's the dream, and that only costs like we're actually running a special that's doing that right now. And then the special, everything is already like kind of set up, so you can't like modify things. But we're running a special where all of that's happening at, I think it's one, is it 185? Did we price it out to 185? It's 185 without the car. Okay, it's 185 without the car. And so there's that, right? The Kenyan dream that the American dream tried to hide from us, right? Right. So buy by June to July is safe. It depends. So our special, it's kind of like a holiday special. We're going to close that in February. The reason we're closing it in February is because we want to make sure we can get all 6 bonds in 1 year for that client guaranteed. So the more months inside the year we go, the greater the chance that that doesn't happen, right? Because if we see like if we start seeing like super low, interest rates, we would pause on that and say, okay, is there somewhere else we want to go with this? And we'd have a conversation, with that client and see like, hey, do you want to switch to like Oak Special Fund on these? And then we had to do like a breakdown of like what Oak Special Fund is, and then they need to go to their investment person, whether it's their CPA, their lawyer, their whatever, because we don't give out U.S. investment advice or anything like that, because we're not licensed to do so in the United States. So they then take all the prospectuses and all of this, just like this prospectus. This is from the government. This isn't something that we created, right? So we show you whatever prospectus is out there. You take it to your people, have them sign off on it, and check it out, make sure everything's legit, blah 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 blah, and then come back. So we start seeing 7% on bonds. We're gonna pump the brakes and be like, whoa, maybe you want to get into Oak Special Fund, right? And you guys can Google that. What is Oak Special Fund Kenya, right? Or Mansa X Special Fund, right? Again, Google that, Mansa X Special Fund Kenya, right? That's a fund that's more risky. It's still suitable for medium risk, so it's not a high risk fund. Still suitable for medium risk, but it's more risky than a bond. A bond is sovereign debt, right? So very little risk there at all. Oak Special Fund, Mansa X Special Fund, more risky, but like this bond is giving 14%, this bond is giving 12%, right? Mansa X did 20% last year. That's not an indicator, though, of what they're going to do this year. Oak Special Fund, I think, did 22% last year. That's not an indicator, though, of what they're going to do this year, right? So if you're familiar with investments, you've heard that time and time again. Past performance is not an indicator of future performance. All of these disclaimers that they have to give, right? So might it be 20% again? Maybe. Maybe not. So now it becomes a little bit riskier, but maybe that risk is still better than going all the way down to 7%, because now we're under target. Now we're under 10%, right? So now that becomes a little, funky on your payments too, covering everything for that month, right? So those are some of the processes that we go through to make sure that the clients are okay. And it's going to end. There's going to be a month where it drops, and we call everybody and we're like, it dropped out, the bottom dropped out, and let's see what happens next month, and nothing happens next month. And then that's the new normal, right? So the longer you take to get in on this particular opportunity, the closer you're going to get to the dropout. We are making an assumption based on absolutely no facts. We are making an assumption based on absolutely no facts that it will last into 2027. We're only making that assumption because 2027 is the election year, and we believe that the president will try to maintain these awesome bond rates and these awesome investment rates to make his government look good and to get reelected, right? So purely political speculation based on nothing other than that, right? So that's what we're hoping for. But by July of next year, it might be 7%, right? So we especially with this special where we're doing so much, because imagine in this special, you get a house. If you upgrade, you get a car. You get land, you get immigration, you get everything, right? So you're 100% taken care of. Imagine if now the passive income was the part that we couldn't deliver on. After you built a house, you got a car, you got you got land, right? Imagine if that became the issue, and that's why we're cutting it off at February, because we feel confident that, if everybody's onboarded by then, we should be able to get, the bonds for the rest of the year at the right rate, right? So that's, we feel confident in that risk analysis of the market. But yeah, there's no telling when these amazing rates are going to go away. So move on it. This is not a situation to like play around with. Do your due diligence, do whatever you got to do on that side, but you need to shit or get off the pot, as we used to say in good old Pennsylvania, on this one, because it's not going to last forever. Already, we're not seeing the rates we used to see, right? Like last year it was 18%, this year it's 14%, right? So we're assuming that, next year, by the end of the year, it will be 10%, which is our minimum target. Past 10%, it it's not that it stops being worth it, but it starts being expensive, because past 10%, 75,000 ain't going to cut it anymore, right? So now, once you start, going lower than 10%, now you're starting to look at situations where you need over 100,000 to cover your basic, and then it's like, all right, what are we doing? You know, Still a lot less than the, couple million that you need in the United States, right? Like when people are doing their 401k, they're trying to get to like 1.2 million by 59 and a half or whatever, right? So still way less than you would need in the United States. But at the same time, there's not a whole lot of folks that are going to, be able to pull that out. And that would be just for the bond laddering. So then on top of that, you would need another hundred and whatever thousand to build your house and all of that stuff. You know what I mean? So now we're talking about, quarter million or more, just to get that going, right? So, you know, so right now I can still get 20 years at around 14% if I come in by February. Yeah, that's what we're predicting. That's what we're hoping for. You know what I mean? Again, no one knows, but we feel confident in that risk assessment that we should be able to do that as long as people are onboarded by February. And really, February is like the last day. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of folks. Hey, Surviving Men series, how are you? There's a lot of folks that are onboarding now. Like yesterday, we had 13 consultations and onboarded 13 people yesterday, right? So their trusts are being formed today. And I don't think that we're going to be able to get them in on this bond, but they'll definitely be ready for January's auction, right? So they're going to be good to go. You come in on February, that means we're just creating your trust in February, right? So in March, we might not even be able to get you in the March bond. So your first bond might be April. See why we're cutting it off in February? Because we're already past Q1 by the time your account is open and registered for us to even purchase your first bond. So that's where it gets hairy. Like, ugh, are we going to make it by the end of the year because we took so long? So February is definitely, pushing it to the last minute. But yeah, you definitely want, and some of these, and we will cut it up. Typically, we don't cut things up. We don't do like payment plans and any of that type of stuff. We will cut things up on the ultimate package for this, right? So if somebody's like, well, wait, but I want the house and I want the whatever, but I can only pay for the bond laddering now. Cool. We'll lock in the price for the house, and all of that, and you can pay that later and get your bond situation out of the way so that your money is handled. Because obviously that's the most important thing, is get your money handled. So you can handle the bond side and just do the 75,000 and let us get the bonds going for you and let us get the trust going for you. And then after we set up the trust fund and put the bonds in the trust fund and all of that, and of course you're the beneficiary of the trust fund, then you can come back and be like, all right, cool, now I want to build the house and all of that. So because of the time situation, we will do that for you. From Kenya, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I live in Diani Beach. Yeah, man. I mean, I get on it. I definitely get on it. Kenya closes down in December as well. right? So that creates a bit of a delay as well. All of the government officials whose signatures we need on things, they're all overseas for like, right? Whether they believe in Christmas or whatever it is they believe in, they definitely believe in taking off for the holiday. And so there are like no high-ranking government officials right now that can sign off on things. So we can get certain stuff done, but then we hit a wall until they come back and they sign like the trust. We can complete the trust, fully and have everything set up, and then you send that trust to BRS, which is just a government agency. We don't have to get into what that means or whatever, but we send it there, and then they sign off. That signature is going to be delayed. So that's like the last signature. Once they sign off on that trust can then get the account, it's called the CSD account, to buy bonds. So as soon as the trust is done, we can start going after bonds, right? But we got to get that done. So, yeah. So what do I have to do? Consultation first? Right. You do the initial consultation first. It does cost money. We used to do free initial consultations and people just wasted our time. So it does cost money, but we credit the money back to whatever it is that you get with us. So in the end, it's free. So you do your initial consultation. We'll then credit what you paid on your initial consultation to the 75,000 for the bond laddering. We'll talk it all over. We'll send you a contract. You can have whoever look over the contract, your lawyer, your whoever, look over the contract, whatever. He'll have the contract signed and notarized, and you'll send it back. Right? Once you do that, we will start building your trust. As soon as your trust is done, we will start putting those bonds in it, and you'll be the beneficiary of said trust. Right? And then, the rest of the stuff that you want to do, we can do that later. So we can we typically like to do immigration as soon as possible. So if you are able to add the immigration in, it makes sense because it's a countdown to dual citizenship in Kenya. So you need 7 years, right? I've been married for 7 years. I'm about to get my dual citizenship in a month or two, right? So you need 7 years no matter what. I needed 7 years on the marriage side, or you need 7 years on the residency permit side, right? So if you're looking to get dual citizenship, the faster you start your time, the faster you're going to get that dual citizenship. So we always recommend, like, all right, if that's your goal, because some people, their goal is permanent residence. They don't care about dual citizenship. So, but if the goal is dual citizenship with Kenya, then try and add that into it. Because the sooner you start, the sooner you finish. There is no shortcut. There's no citizenship by investment. There's none of that. It's 7 years no matter what. Whether you marry somebody, whether you don't marry somebody, it's 7 years. It's not. It's not. Because the bonds cost what they cost. Because each bond has to be a minimum of $1 million. We typically sometimes the wording is weird on the amortizations. So some amortizations will say anything under $1 million will get fully refunded in the first amortization, and some say $1 million and above won't get funded. And so because of that, we typically put like $1,050,000, right, just to make sure we're like above that number, and then from there. Hey George, what's going on, man? But yeah, this is something that we've only now been able to do, but we love it. We love it because it definitely puts you in a position of FU. Definitely puts you in a position of you don't have to work again. If you are working and your boss says something slick to you, it just puts you in that position of like, I'm not worried about money at all. So now I'm going to do what I love doing. If I love, activism, I'm going to go be an activist. If we got a guy down here that does flies for fly fishing. This man been working for 30 something years. He goes fishing when he can, all of that stuff. Has always wanted to just make flies for fly fishing his whole life and couldn't do it. And now he's on, this program, and he can sit at home and finally do his fly fishing. And, he sells the flies on SD or something like that, but that's what makes him happy. And he ain't been able to do it until now. Right. And been dreaming about doing it 30 something years. So yeah. Yeah, man, come on up. Yeah. Request up. I'll bring you up. Request up, Penrock. Or do I have to bring it? Let me see. I don't know if I can I do that? I don't see the option to like pull you up, bro. Just request up and I'll bring you up. Oh wait, I do see the option now. Hold on. There you go. You can only request up on the TikTok side. Sorry about that. YouTube and Facebook. I don't think there's an option on Facebook to like request up either. I sent you the request. Maybe he's having some technical difficulties, so we'll just wait for him. But yeah, so it this has been the easiest way to do this thing that we've come across in years, right? So, but it's not. It's just not a permanent thing. It's unfortunate, but it's unsustainable. You know what I mean? They can't keep on paying out better than the S&P 500 in a guaranteed sovereign debt bond. You know what I mean? So it's just unsustainable. So we're assuming we got another good year of it, and then it's going to be an election year. So we're thinking during the election year, the government's not going to allow people to be like, oh, look at the bond rates. This government sucks. Get rid of this president, get a new president. So we're thinking just from a political side of things that it should last through that election year. But there's nothing other than political speculation attached to that opinion. So there's no data to back that up. But the special funds are doing good. The thing with the special funds, right? Because a lot of people are like, oh, well, I'll just go into the special fund if the bonds dip, right? Because the special funds are doing 20% anyway, right? Okay, fine. Now, there's a lot of fees in the special funds. You're not going to actually get that 20%, but you're going to get a 20% gross. Your net's going to be something different. Okay. Issue with the special funds are they're invested in the bonds, right? The special funds, they practice capital preservation via diversification, right? So they try to preserve the capital in the fund by diversifying the investments they invest in so that one goes down, but the other one comes up and they preserve their capital, right? That's their investment philosophy. So the mindset of, oh, well, when the bonds go down, I'll just go to the Oak Special Fund, or when the bonds go down, I'll just go to the Mansa X Special Fund, or, I'm just going to go to one of these special funds and invest in one of these special funds when the bond goes down. The idea of that is actually flawed because the special funds are also investing in the bonds. So when the bonds go down, like now, mind you, they're locked into whatever they're locked in, and I'm not sure which bonds they bought. So they might have all the 20-year, 30-year bonds, and so they might be locked in for quite a while. But even if they have a 30-year bond, the amortization schedule is still there. So in the amortization, what ends up happening, that's why even when somebody picks this 20-year bond, we still are only talking about 10 years. Because in the amortization, every so many years, they just give you some of your principal back. The interest rate stays the same, but you have less money in the bond now, right? So if you put 1 million local currency in, and we'll just call that $10,000. It's not, but let's use easy numbers, right? It's less than 10,000, but let's just use easy numbers. 10,000 equals 1 million, right? We're just going to use that for easy math, right? So if you put 1 million in, which is your 10,000, they might turn around and say, all right, cool. It's a 20-year bond. It's been 8 years. Now is the first amortization. So in this amortization, we're going to give you a 500,000. You're 500,000 back. So you got a 500,000 in now, right? Now, if you had less than 1 million, let's say you had 800,000 in, they'd be like, here you go. Here's all your money back, right? They wouldn't, and then now you're not in the bond at all at 8 years when you wanted to be in for 20, right? But if you're over 1 million, they're going to be like, all right, cool. Here's 500,000 back. Now you got a 500,000 in, right? Then maybe 8 more years. Okay. Now here's 300,000 back. Now you only have 200,000 in, right? You still getting the same interest. The interest rate hasn't changed, but your principal in the bond has now changed. So now you're in a situation where yes, you're still getting the same interest rate, but you have less money in, so your monthly income is lower, right? So that's why folks they got a 20-year bond or even a 30-year bond, but we're only saying that their bills are paid for 10 years because that amortization schedule will kick in and push that money back. Now they get their cash in their hand, right? So they're able to reinvest. The issue becomes, what if you want to reinvest in a bond again because it's such a simple mechanism, but now bond rates are 7%. And you just got kicked out of a 14.1% with the amortization. So now to reinvest in this, it's not, maybe not even worth it, right? So now you got to go look for other investments. And so that's why a lot of our folks, by the time the first amortization comes, they already own Airbnbs. They already have other investments that are going to be kicking in, monies and all of that. Having technical difficulties. Let me see. I can try to invite you one more time. Let's see if that fixes anything. And if not, definitely you can type out your question. I'll wait. Kimunto. That sounds like a Kisi name. Kisi is the first place I lived in Kenya. It's funny. The longer you're here, the easier it is to tell what tribe someone's from their name. That's interesting, isn't it? I wish we kind of had that in the U.S. Welcome, Kimunto. Yeah, it's interesting. I love it, actually. First place I lived in Kenya was a place called Sunika in Kisii, right next to Kisii town. You're still having the technical difficulties, huh? I did send you an invite again, hoping it would clear you up. I've heard people say that if you like exit out of the app and come back in, it clears up some of those difficulties. I don't know if that's true or not, but yeah. Okay, so explain the difference between purchasing the bonds along with buying the permits. So there's only going to be one permit, right? Whichever permit makes sense for you, and the difference is purely the money, right? So there's the money and there's the time. So if you're looking for example, dual citizenship, okay, if you're looking for permanent residence, it kind of doesn't matter, like whatever, because the only thing that's going to change between you being a permit holder and a permanent resident is that you don't have to renew the permit. Nothing else changes, right? So, but if your focus is dual citizenship, then the timing matters. And it only matters because the faster you start, the faster you finish. It takes 7 years no matter what, right? So the faster you start, the faster you finish. So that's the difference. A lot of folks, yes, the money typically matters the most, right? Being able to support yourself and all that typically does matter the most. But if you keep pushing, like if you're like, okay, I'm gonna get my money set up. Okay, I got the money set up. You know what? I'm gonna get my house next. I'm gonna get the land next. I'm gonna get this, that, the third next. Now you're in 4 years. And so you literally just wasted 4 years that you could have been building towards dual citizenship. Now you start your 7 years at the end of those 4 years. So now it took you 11 or 12 years to become a dual citizen when it should have took you 7, right? So that's where the permit thing, where we always recommend anyone who's trying to do dual citizenship, the first thing you do is get the permit and let that clock start running, and then do everything else. Now, in this situation where we're time locked against the bottom falling out of these bond ladders, then it's best to do them both at the same time, obviously, right? But then that becomes a liquidity issue, whether the person has enough, funds to do that or not. But in this situation, the best case scenario is really to get it all, right? In that total package, that does include immigration, right? So that 185 that covers everything does include immigration. So those folks who came in like yesterday, four or five folks did the 185. So their house, their land is actually already set up. A couple hours after they wired, that payment, their land was already, set up for them and all of that. So their land is there. Their house is going to be built. The price is locked, so the type of house that's being built is already decided upon in the deal. If they want a bigger house, they got to pay bigger money, whatever. But all of that's already locked in for them, right? So their immigration has already gotten started today. Our lawyers are working on that. Their trust is being designed now, so we got to sit down with them and figure out what rules they want in the trust and all of that stuff. So that'll be done by the end of the week, and they're already on their way. And then everything is taken care of for them. Most of them upgraded to the car, right? So they're going to have a brand new car when they come here with a 7 year, 200,000 kilometer warranty. 200,000 kilometers, like 124,000 miles. So it's going to be a 7 year, 124,000 mile warranty on a brand new SUV, brand new house built from the ground up. The land is theirs. The trust fund is kicking out that money every month to sustain them. They're golden, right? So everything is included in that kind of that ultimate package type of thing that we're running for the holiday. But definitely, if it's a bare bones transaction and you're like, all right, let me take care of the money, we would always recommend you take care of the money and the immigration. And then, then you're free to kind of do whatever else you want to do along the way. Because we have some people who, like, they are not relocating yet. Like, they got a really good job. They're almost at their pension or whatever. Like, we actually had a guy yesterday, a young guy, who actually has a pension in the U.S., which is unheard of these days, right? He's in his, I think he's in his 20s, right? And he's just trying to get his generational wealth started and all of that. And he actually has a pension at his job. But, 401k, retirement, all of that stuff, they're like, maybe they're 7 years away. We actually had a guy in Maryland who's 7 years away. So he's actually going to be in the United States the entire 7 years that he's building towards his dual citizenship, right? He'll be visiting here, yearly, but he already has land here. He already has a trust here, building generational wealth for him. He was able to get in on the big boys because he was here in 2003. So he has the 19%, the 18%, he got all of that. And the 18% was only an 8.5 year bond, but all of our people bought it anyway, right? We typically buy 20-year bonds, but it was just so much money at 18.46% that everybody bought it, right? So, but he got all of that going on. And then by the time he retires, he'll then have his retirement kicking money into him, and he'll be able to move here essentially as a citizen. So how much is the trust permanent residency? It's 85. Yep. The permanent residency is typically 12,000. Anytime you bundle it with anything else, we're able to maneuver some of the margin and make it 10,000. So it's 85. So 75 is well, wait a minute. You said the trust and the permanent residency? So do you mean like a trust with no bond laddering? Like just a trust? Because that is a bit different. But I'm assuming you mean the trust with the bond laddering for the passive income. So that would be 85. If you're just setting up a trust that doesn't have anything in it, right, yeah, okay, 85. And this one is actually cool. This month, a lot of our people who are already onboarded, unfortunately, even if you, like, let's say you wired that money today, this is going to close before all your stuff is set up. So this one is only essentially accessible to our already onboarded clients. But a lot of our clients got both of these this month. That can happen, which is cool because it puts your heart at ease, essentially, right? Because both of these are long enough. This is 13 years, this is 21 years. So both of these are long enough for you to, like, get some good life out of them, right? And with these, their payment dates are different. Let me see if I can bring up the payment dates and show you. Hold on. Where is it? Is it effects? Yeah. All right. Let's see. Okay, there they are. You guys on YouTube, let me see if I can switch this and show you the payment dates as well. Okay. All right. So the little on the top is the small one, the 13-year one. The one on the bottom is the long one, right? The 20-year one, right? So you can see if you look up at the top, it is what? March and September. It pays out in March and September, right? If you look down at the one at the bottom, it pays out in April and October. See that? So you get four separate months right in those two different bonds. What happens sometimes is one bond will come up and one bond will be like 5 years and the other bond will be 20 years. So then we're only really looking at the 20-year one then, right? To make sure that our client, you know, has passive income for a very long time, right? But this month, sometimes we get these kind of setups where there are two bonds at play. Both bonds are long, relatively long, 10 years and 20 years, right? And they take up two separate payment cycles because these are reopens, right? These are not the original opening of these bonds. So with this, you would get 4 months out of the year. So this is an entire quarter's worth of passive income in these two bonds. So this is beautiful, right? So when this happens, it puts people's heart at ease because they're closer to getting all 12 months, right? The nerve-wracking part is as you're approaching getting all 12 months, you're like, oh man, am I going to find good bonds for all 12 months until I get there? This is one of those situations that just puts everybody's heart at ease because they get 4 months, you know, right off the bat in the same bond. Typically, you get one bond auction a month. So in that one bond auction a month, you're looking for, you know, the best kind of return on investment that you can get. And that's going to pay out every 6 months. As you can see, all of these payment cycles and both, I don't know why with both YouTube and TikTok, but it cuts off the first, you know, row here, just in the way it formats the picture. But you can tell based on what you're seeing that every 2 months there's a payment, or every 6 months. I'm sorry, every 6 months there's a payment, right? There's two payments in every year. So that's how it works. So that's why we're looking for six bonds because those six bonds are going to pay 12 times, right? But it can be nerve wracking because it could take 6 months. It could take more. You could skip a month, right? Like you would have January and then, you know, the next one might be July, right? So you might have January and July. So if January, the interest rates were garbage, you could wait until July and see, you know what I mean? It would actually be February because February, the payout would be January typically. But if January was garbage, then you could say, all right, we're going to wait till August. But if you wait till August, that's your last bite at the apple. So then when you get to August, you just got to pick something, right? Unless you want to stretch the picks out over years. But the longer you take, the more risk that the bottom falls out, right? So you can skip the first one and be like, all right, let's roll the dice and see what happens, you know, the next one. But then at the next one, you're stuck, you know? So that's how the system works, to try and get you, you know, the best rates possible. All right. All right. So we're back on bond. All right, good. All right, makes sense. Sorry for you Facebook guys. You guys can't see the visuals. I don't know what to tell you. If you guys ever are following on Facebook and you want to see the visuals we're talking about, just jump over to either YouTube or TikTok where I can put up like background visuals there. Yeah, so we kind of covered that earlier, but essentially, just we would set up what it would cost, you know, for that person. So if you needed more than the target 50,000 a month, which some people do, like we have had, like there's a family of 10 that we relocated, and they're like, look, it's 10 of us. Right? But a family of 10 doing a full relocation, you know what I mean? It's typically not an issue for them to come up with the final. Like, you can't be a family of 10 talking about bringing your dogs and bringing your cats and you coming over with a whole homestead and be broke, right? So if it's a family of 10 that's relocating, it's typically not an issue for them to increase the output of the bonds. But they didn't have to increase it that much. Like, we sat down and like really went over a budget and like, what do you want to spend? This is what you're going to spend, and went through like all of that stuff. And they're still only at like somewhere around 120,000 a month for all the whole family of 10 and all the dogs. And they're bringing like 5 dogs and 3 cats, and we're building them like 4 different houses, and all of that stuff. So that's an extraordinary example. But if you need more, you can just adjust it. I'll tell you what, a lot of our folks are just like, hey, it's like, that's cool. Like, it's a baseline, right? So, worst case scenario, I fit into the baseline. Like, I step back what I'm doing to match the amount of money I got coming in, which, makes a hell of a lot of sense to me. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, if I don't know, if I had to scale back, I definitely could. You know what I mean? Like, I definitely employ like luxury employees, essentially, right? Like, employees that I don't necessarily need, that I could always scale back on and stuff like that. So, worst case scenario, there are always like bad times, in life and all of that. But if you got a bunch of passive income coming in, typically money takes care of that. Money doesn't necessarily buy happiness, but it does reduce unhappiness, right? Been a ton of scientific studies into that. And it doesn't necessarily buy you happiness, but it does buy off unhappiness, which is almost just as important. I think it goes without saying that your life absolutely changes when you don't have to worry about money in every way, shape, and form. The things that you want to do, the dreams that you've always had, the hobbies that you invest in, it all just changes when you're not worried about money. Yeah, you double it for every 50,000 that you want. So if you want 100,000, then you double it. Now, the full price doesn't double because there's like attorney fees and like brokerage fees and setup fees and all that. You don't need to set up an additional trust, and so those fees don't double. So it's not like it's a doubling of the actual package price, but it is a doubling of the bond investment portion of the price. So instead of doing 1 million each bond, you're doing 2 million each bond. Essentially, if you wanted 100,000 a month instead of 50,000 a month. The amortization schedule is different for each bond. So it depends on the maturity of the bond. There have been bonds that don't even amortize, so it just depends on what the central bank is doing with that. So I couldn't give you like a every 3 years it amortize. Like, I can't. It just depends on which bond. What's an amortize? So essentially, if you're under 1 million, you can't participate in the entire bond if there's an amortization schedule, right? So if you invest, but you're under 1 million shillings, at some point in the investment, they'll just give you your money back, right? If you're over 1 million, which is why we have a base investment, of that million. If you're over 1 million shillings, then they amortize you. They amortize the bond. So that means let's just I'm just going to use easy numbers, right? Let's just say it's a 10-year bond, right? So they're going to amortize you. So 4 years into the bond, they might give you 50% of your capital back. So let's say it's 1 million, they give you 500,000 back. So now you got 500,000 riding on the 10%, bonds. You're still getting 10%, but it's half the money in there. So your payment's now half, right? So if you were getting 50,000 a month, now you're getting 25,000 a month. But you got your half a million back, right? So you can invest that in something else. The problem with that is now the rates might be lower. So if you try to reinvest in a bond, the interest rate on the coupon payment on the bond, which is the interest rate on the bond, might be lower, right? So that it might not work out the same way it did the first time. Okay, so you might need to figure out a different investment, but you have a lump sum, half a million in your pocket from that amortization, and that's tax free because that's not part of the money you made. You're only being taxed on the money you're making on the bond. So you're getting a tax free half a million kicked back out to you, right? Then, so that was like 4 years in. So there's 6 years left, right? 3 years into that, they give you 300,000 back. Now you only have 200,000 in the bond, and then maybe the last 3 years you ride out with that 200,000. Then they give you your last 200,000 back. So that's what the amortization is, right? But I can't say which years it's going to be because it changes based on the bond, right? Because if I use that example that I just gave you for like this bond, right? This, remember, you guys, the picture is in a different place. So this is TikTok, this is YouTube, right? But that bond, if I did that, then there's 3 years that are unaccounted for in the math that I just did, right? So it depends on how many years of maturity are in the bond to begin with to figure out the amortization schedule. But they list it like it's in writing in the prospectus, like when the amortization will hit. So you can actually see all the dates. So like when I switch to the payout dates, which is actually another page in this same prospectus, there's an amortization schedule as well where you know exactly what day they're going to give you your money back. And you just take that you could just take it and spend it. Typically, you want your money working for you. So typically when you get that amortization payment, you're already set up on what you're going to invest it into. Maybe you're going to take a piece of it and then reinvest the rest. Like, of course, it's all the way up to you. You can just take all of it and go blow it if you want. But you can never outwork money. So as long as your money is compounding, and as long as it's compounding above inflation, you're golden, right? That money is always going to work harder than you. Always, 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 always. This is just this is literally a cheat code. It's literally easy mode. It's not going to last. So might you be able to find another developing country that ends up in this position and start, investing in them? Maybe. Some countries don't allow you to invest in their bond market directly. Like you have to go through a bank. You don't have to do that here. So that's another, positive aspect of the bond laddering here. Yeah, no, definitely. The easier it is, the more costly it's going to be. Always, always, always. You can do no money down type of stuff. You can do like free stuff. It's just way harder. Way harder. I give you a real good example of that. We had a client that came in before all this bond stuff was going on. And he had a very minimal amount of money. We actually told him not to come. And he was like, screw it, I'm taking a leap of faith. And he came anyway. And so he had a very minimal amount of money off of for like the rest of his life type of thing, like less than $10,000. And so he went up to Caricho, started making friends with coffee farmers and all of that. He had no money. He had a Google Voice phone number. he started calling back to the United States via Google Voice, trying to sell coffee beans, and he had no idea what he was doing. So initially, he would call back to like grocery stores, like Giant Eagle, and those types of places, and be like, "Hey, I got coffee beans. It's the best in the world. It's Kenyan coffee." Da, 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 da. And they would be like, "No." Calling Walmart and stuff like that. They say, no, we have a procurement team. Like, you would have to submit a proposal to procurement, and then they negotiate back and forth. It takes months, blah, 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 blah. It's horrible, right? So you can't do that. Like, you can't be like, well, I have the best, therefore Walmart has to, want what I got, because that's not how business works. So he learned that the hard way. And then he actually came back to us and was like, told no my thousandth time today. So his mindset was incredible. It's exactly the kind of mindset an entrepreneur needs. He was tracking the no's and excited that 1,000 people had told him no, because that means he was closer to the yes, which is absolutely correct. And in that process, he found out that, okay, my actual target client are boutique coffee shops who understand that Kenyan coffee is among the top 5 coffees in the world, right? Only coffee snobs even know that, right? So those boutique coffee shops was part of that target market. And the other thing was they had to have a coffee roaster in their shop. And part of their marketing had to be they get up at 4 in the morning and start roasting coffee beans so that the neighborhood could smell that roasted coffee and then drift into their shop, right? And then the people that drift into their shop understand that Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee has this profile, and Colombian coffee has that profile, and Ugandan coffee has this profile, and Ethiopia is where coffee is invented. Like those people, the coffee snobs, not Dunkin' Donuts people, right? And so once he figured that out, he started finding those places and calling them. Now, remember, he ain't got no money. He's spending time. 18 months later, right? He's been living on 10 grand for 18 months. 18 months later, he hooks up with the USXM Bank. USXM Bank finances the entire deal because it's an import-export deal. XM Bank means Export-Import Bank of the United States of America. You don't have access to it if you're not doing that, right? So he gained access to that government-owned bank that his tax dollars have always been funding when he left America, right? So he did the deal through XM Bank. They financed everything. And that first deal, 19 months later, he made 1.27 million US dollars on that deal. But it took him almost 2 years of breaking his back because he didn't have any money. So can you do things without money? Yes. Is it hard? Absolutely, it's hard. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do in your life, right? Now, this is easy. So what does that mean? It means it's going to cost you money. Easy costs money. Hard is free. But you can get there either way. You just got to have the mindset for it. I'm not sure. He might have had a better entrepreneurial mindset than me, because I'm not sure I would have got through 1,000 no's. And he definitely made more money on his first deal than I made on my first deal. He's an instantaneous millionaire because he had a much better entrepreneurial mindset than even I had. And I was the one who was, mentoring him through it, but his mindset was on point. He was do or die, So, yeah, you can do things with no money at all, but it's going to be the hardest thing you ever do in your life. And then there's easy things like this that's going to cost money. And that's just the way it works. And the easy things, they also cycle. They don't last. The hard things are typically the same over the generations, right? So the stories of people getting it done the hard way typically resonate with future generations, and those future generations can copy, the hard way. But the easy ways cycle, because easy ways, the big dogs hear about them and jump on them right away. I guarantee you Bill Gates owns some Kenyan bonds. I guarantee you Elon Musk owns some Kenyan bonds. Their family offices, guarantee you they're invested in these bonds because they're some of the best investments in the world right now. And it's why Kenya is one of the highest potential countries in Africa, because they're investor friendly for sure. So all of the biggest, Saudi Arabian families, all of that stuff, all of those families, they're all invested here right now because this is where the easy money is at the moment. Take money to make money. That's the truth of it. That's the truth of it. Money has a gravity and it attracts more money. So that's just the nature of money. It attracts more money. That's why it'll always outwork you. You'll never outwork money. You can have three jobs. One investment's gonna make more money than all three of your jobs, right? So you'll just never outwork compounding. Compounding gets stronger over time. You get weaker, right? Your knees start hurting, your back starts hurting, your elbow starts hurting, right? Your arthritis starts setting in. You know what I mean? God forbid diabetes sets in. But the older you get, the slower and weaker you get. The older compounding it gets, the stronger it gets. How long does it take to set up a trust? Typically, it takes about 6 weeks for the trust to be done. In December, when the government shuts down, it takes longer, obviously. But typically, it takes about 6 weeks to get it all set up or ready to rock. The trust itself is actually up and running typically in 2 weeks, but there's a process to it. So you create the trust, and that trust has to be registered. And then after that trust is registered, you take the registration because the registration can't own anything. So if you stopped at the registration, you legally have a trust, but that trust can't actually own anything. So then an individual has to own everything in trust for that registration. That's the bad way to do it because now you got an individual that owns your stuff, right? You don't want that. So you take the registration and then you have to incorporate the registration. Then that incorporation, which is a special corporate structure, it's not like a normal corporation over here. So it's a special trust only corporate structure. So it's not like Inc. or anything like that. In fact, the abbreviation, like how we have LLC, the abbreviation for that is registered trustees, right? So that's what goes on the back of the corporation, right? So once you incorporate that trust, it has its own social security number. It's called the KRA pin here, right? So it has its own social security number and it can own things in its own name, including this CSD account, right? You guys see that CSD account? This CSD account, it will be allowed to have its own CSD account. So it would be able to buy its own bonds. And then you are the beneficiary of the trust. So it would be able to pay you those bonds. Now, in the United States, that might be a bad setup because it's like, well, wait a minute. If the trust gets the money from the bond and it's paid its 10% withholding tax on that money, and then it pays it out to us, when I get taxed, because now the money left the trust to me, in America, you would be correct. This is not America. So here, the rules on the specific type of trust that we set up is that every year, up to 10 million Kenyan shillings can be distributed by the trust to a beneficiary per year, tax free, right? That's a rule in the law for the specific type of trust that we set up here, right? So funneling the money through the trust does not create a taxable event where you're now paying tax on that trust twice because it's an offshore trust. It's a trust out here running under these rules, not under those rules. So it has nothing to do with nothing to do with your U.S. Social Security number. And the reason for that is it's a non-grantor trust. The money is not coming from the United States. If you're paying money from the United States into your trust to jumpstart compounding, which it will do, it'll jumpstart compounding. So if that's what you want to do, that's what's called a grantor trust. If you have a grantor trust, you have to tell the IRS about it. You have to tell the IRS where all the bank accounts are. You have to tell the IRS how much money you're putting into it. You have to add 2 or 3 different reporting forms to your tax return every year. It's a nightmare. If it's a non-grantor trust, which means that none of the assets in the trust are coming from the United States, right? Where are the assets coming from? Central Bank of Kenya, right? From the bonds in the Central Bank of Kenya that are in the trust, right? So if that's what's happening and all the assets are foreign, all right, and a distribution has not been made to a U.S. citizen, it is non-grantor and no tax filings need to happen at all. Now, the first time you pay yourself, that might end up being a tax filing, which is why I said there may be structures in between the trust and the person, and those structures might own everything, right? So there might be like an LLC, the Kenyan version of an LLC might actually own the house, might actually own the car, might actually own all those things. So the trust is paying the LLC to cover all of those, basic needs and all of that, even down to, your grocery bill and all of that, but it's not coming to you. So even in that situation, or from the U.S. side, you may not need to make a tax filing, right? But we give all the information to like your tax professional and let them go over it, and they let you know how they want it structured. Because if they're already doing your taxes, they might want a different structure, right? Sometimes we have folks who are coming in that already got businesses, already got corporations. So if you have a C corporation specifically, and it only works with a C corporation, then there's something called foreign dividend received deduction. If the C corporation owns 10% or more of your local company across, anywhere in the world, and the local company pays the C corporation in dividends, then the foreign dividend received deduction might reduce the taxes on those dividends by 100%. So there are folks that, they're just investing, they're not necessarily moving over here, and then the money that they make over here, they're giving it back to their American companies at a 0% tax rate. And then they're paying payroll taxes because then they're either doing a distribution to themselves, or they're on W-2 payroll with their own company, and so they pay their payroll taxes, but they're actually making money from, foreign investments completely tax free because those dividends get a 100% tax deduction, right? So it just depends on what kind of stuff you got going on already, back home, and how you're trying to play this game. And that's where like your tax professional and your tax lawyers, get involved, and they would advise us as to what's the best for you specifically. That makes sense. Let me know if I tell you something and it creates more questions than answers. And answer your questions. I'm so far away from being a beginner that I don't even think about beginner questions anymore. If you think the question is dumb, just ask it. If you got, a beginner question and you need answer, just ask it. Because I'm not gonna just think of it and be able to. I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm not gonna be able to think up, your the kind of standard basic 101 question and just cover it. So if you got a question and you're like hesitant to ask because you think it's a dumb question, it's not. 100 other people are watching and also or want to ask that same question. So go ahead and just ask it. That's also one good thing about TikTok. TikTok is showing me who's watching and not entering the room. So I can actually see how many people are like not entered into the room, but they've stopped on their swipe and they're watching the live from outside the room. I can't see that on YouTube or Facebook. I don't even know if it's possible on Facebook, but I can't see it on YouTube. But TikTok, I can see a little thing up in the corner saying there are 30 people watching your live. So, I don't know what that means. So I have to finish the relocation. I don't know what that means. Ask the question a different way, maybe. Like if you relocate, you're moving from one place to the other. If you stop in the middle of the relocation, like I mean, you're free. You can, whatever. But I mean, you take a loss, I guess, because you already paid for relocation. So I don't know what you mean by finish the relocation. Oh, do you have to get dual citizenship? No, 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 no. You can you can pay for renewals for the rest of your life. I think that would be, but you could. But the other option on the other side of dual citizenship is permanent residence. So you could apply for permanent residence where you don't have to pay renewals anymore. You're permanent, but you don't have the privileges of a citizen either, right? And so for me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But there are people where it does because they might be like we used to have some clients from like Germany, right? And so they're black folks, but they're born in German. They're Afro Germans or whatever, right? And so they were like coming to Kenya. Now Germany has since changed this, and I think they only changed it last year or whatever. But Germany was one of those countries where if you take dual citizenship, you lose German citizenship, right? So they all went for permanent residence because they didn't want to lose their German citizenship. So there are people where it does make sense to go permanent residence instead of dual citizenship. But now for them, a lot of them have come back to us and like, hey, can you apply for dual citizenship for me now because now Germany allows it. So that's how I knew they changed. Actually, I don't typically track European countries, but when a bunch of those clients popped up and were like, hey, can we go ahead and apply for dual citizenship now? That's how we were aware of the change. So if you don't own a business in Kenya, how do the trusts pay out if you live in Kenya? Oh, it just pays you directly, because it just pays like directly into your bank account. Now, again, we may create a business for you. You know what I mean? So like a holding company. Like we might create a company that just holds your house. Might be your house and your car if you want that in there. So on and so forth. So we may create a holding company for you that might work for your tax situation, even if you don't like own a business, and let the trust pay the holding company. Because if the trust is paying the holding company, then technically it hasn't paid a U.S. citizen, right? So if a U.S. citizen gets paid, then technically, technically, you're supposed to file that on your tax return. How would they know? There's a program. What do they call it? I can't think of the name of it, but they make you fill out a W-4, right? When you open up a bank account and you're a U.S. citizen, not that you're not a Kenyan, no, and you're a U.S. citizen. There's a treaty that the U.S. has with a bunch of foreign companies, and I just can't think of the name of it right now. But essentially, it's like a reporting treaty where they'll actually report to the IRS, about you. It doesn't happen often. Not everybody, maintains because I guess there's a cost involved in the reporting. And I guess the U.S. used to pay the cost, but thanks to Doge and the current, situation we got going on in the administration, those subsidies have stopped. So now why would the bank spend its own money to tell on you to the IRS? So like they kind of shot themselves in the foot with this administration, but there is a chance that if you've opened up a bank account and you're an American, that bank will tell America what's going on in your bank account, right? And then America will be waiting for you to file the multiple forms that you need to file with your tax return. So there's that, right? So now when you have the trust has its own bank account. It's not your bank account. So that's one thing. Beyond the trust having its own bank account, if you have the company, the company would have its own bank account. It's not your bank account. So it's not included in that reporting framework, right? You might still have a bank account, right? But you would just utilize it differently, and go forward from there. So that's the reason why someone may or may not want to have, a structure where they have a holding company in Kenya. That's excellent. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely look into it. Do your due diligence, work with a professional, and go from there. I can tell you that as far as like folks in the diaspora are concerned, the only two professional companies that do relocations to Kenya are our company, Diaspora Freedom Initiative, and Traverse Culture, which is a separate company. We can introduce you to them if you'd like. Our company focuses on generational wealth and trust funds and building houses for people and all of that. Traverse Culture has a deeper focus on medical tourism, apartments, right? Like people who want to live in apartments and pay rent, for however long and all of that. And they focus on Nairobi. We don't really focus on Nairobi. Like we focus on people who want beach houses, they want to live out in the country, they want to farm, they want whatever. We could do similar things, not 100% the same, but they're legit, right? They're a legit company that's going to do you right. Some of the other ones are you're going to have a problem. So those we're the only two legitimate, well-structured companies that do relocations on the diaspora side of things. So absolutely, look them up, check them out. You got any questions, ask them. I'll answer them while I'm here today. I'm typically here at this time every day. So did I answer that? Let me go back, see if I missed the comment. Did I answer that other question sufficiently? Oh, thanks for liking the live. Okay. It looks like I did. All right. If you receive a pension and Social Security, can that? Yep. It can. It can. The pension absolutely can. The Social Security also can. But if you give the Social Security that information, you just gave that information to the government. That used to not be a problem. But with this government, the way Social Security gave all the information to ICE, which is not supposed to happen. So typically, the folks who are getting Social Security payments, they get that payment in their U.S. account, and then they do their transfers from their U.S. bank account, however they wish to do it. Pension, on the other hand, though, that's private, unless you got a government pension. Then it might be the same difference. But pension is, if it's a private company pension, then that's different. You can just drop that into whatever account you want if your pension will do international, deposits, because sometimes there's an additional cost to that. They'll typically do it anyway, but they might tell you like we have to charge you this fee. But there's typically an additional cost to that. So what a lot of folks do, especially for Kenya, because Kenya is super high tech when it comes to money transfer, right? So especially with Kenya, what a lot of folks do is they just drop it into their U.S. bank account, and then they do whatever they want from their U.S. bank account. No, 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 no. State, no, no. It's only federal. Actually, and again, you want to talk to your tax professional, right? I'm just telling you what I've learned over the 20 years of doing this and what I've done myself. But actually, on the state level, it's sometimes beneficial. And the reason why it's beneficial is because you're looking to erase your what do they call it? Your state, not nexus, that's for business. You're looking to erase your state tax residency, right? So a lot of people forget about the state, right? So if you move over here, your federal tax residency is going to be erased at like day 181 of you living here. Now that doesn't actually matter because the federal law is if you have a U.S. passport, you got to file U.S. taxes, period, right? We're one of only 3 countries in the world that do that. Us, North Korea, and Eritrea, right? Horrible list. We're on it, right? So that's that. On the state side, which is where people mess up, the state will typically, especially if you're making big money, will typically argue that you still have tax residency in the state to try and get some money out of you, right? So if you have a state pension or something like that, and you move your address and your bank account to overseas in the state database, it's actually one of those steps that helps to establish that your tax residency has left the state and not owe any state taxes, right? And that you are not a resident to any state in the United States. And if you still want a U.S. address and all of that, at that point, you can open an address in one of the states that have no income tax. and then essentially have a tax residency in that state, but that state ain't got no income tax. So you're not concerned with that at that point and go from there. No, you don't pay income tax on it, but remember, it's you still have to do a federal tax return. And you still have to declare your income on that federal tax return. Now there's something called foreign earned income exclusion, right? So let's say you have some Airbnbs out here in Kenya and all of that stuff. You're supposed to report your income on your federal tax return. But the foreign earned income exclusion says, okay, you earned that income in Kenya, therefore your first $130,000 of income is excluded. You don't actually have to pay us, but on that paper, right? So what ends up happening is New York says, oh, hold up, you're still a New Yorker. We see that you paid we see that you got an exclusion for $130,000. That's awesome. Now give us our piece because you're still a New Yorker as far as we're concerned. And if we're not proven in court, we think that you got a tax residency in New York. Now you're like, oh shit, I got to fly back to New York and prove this in court. So what you got to do is you have to build up your case that you're no longer a tax resident there, right? And it's little incremental things. There's no one thing to do. So when you change your address in the New York database, even though there's no income tax on that, that's part of the proof. When you get a Kenyan driver's license and you don't renew your New York driver's license, that's part of the proof. That's why part of what we do in our ultimate package is we convert your driver's license from New York to Kenya, right? Or from US to Kenya, right? So all of these little things, all of these little steps, your address on your federal tax report is now your Kenyan address. That's part of the proof, right? So when they come up with this, oh, we see a federal tax return and that federal tax return got a bunch of money on it. Now we want a piece of the money. You send them all the information, in your reply to their office action. I don't have a New York driver's license. I don't have a New York address. The address on my federal tax return is a foreign address, blah, 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 right? You send all that back, and that builds your case that you no longer have that state tax residence. All right. So that's what you're trying to set up there, even if that payment doesn't have income tax attached to it at all. Is the foreign earned income exclusion a U.S. rule? So it applies to any country? Yes, it's a U.S. rule. Yep. There's also additional U.S. rules that could apply as well. There's something called the FTC, right? The foreign earned income exclusion is IRS Form 2555, I believe. There's something called the FTC, which is Form 1116 or 1118, depending on whether it's the corporate one or the individual one. The FTC says if you pay taxes in another country, dollar for dollar, it can be deducted up to 90% of your U.S. liability. So if you have a U.S. tax liability, you could eliminate some of that, possibly. Again, speak to your own tax advisor or whatever, using the FTC, right? Where I've had to pay taxes in Kenya, so up to 90% of my tax liability, in the U.S., I'm deducting dollar for dollar with the FTC, right? So it's one of those things. That's not even accurate, Robert. You know what I mean? It really, really, really depends on who you are, because the federal earned income or the foreign earned income exclusion is $130,000. It's not $60,000, right? So it just depends on how you're filing those taxes. What form number is that again? It's look up IRS Form 2555, look up IRS Form 1116 and IRS Form 1118. Yeah, it just depends on how you're doing it. There's also things that you can do with corporations, like we were just talking about. And actually, this works in America and foreign. There's a foreign dividend received deduction, which is 100% deduction. And there's a dividend received deduction, which is also 100% reduction, or deduction rather, sorry. So the dividend return deduction only works on C Corps. So you have to have a C Corp. And then if the C Corp owns 10% or more of a subsequent business, and that business pays the C Corp in dividends, those dividends are 100% tax deducted. Right. So you can do that. Typically, when we run into that, someone owns a C corp, and the C corp owns a bunch of LLCs. The bunch of LLCs are typically Airbnbs, right? And those Airbnbs pays the C corp through distribution, right? And when those distributions hit the C corp, they get the dividend received deduction, right? And that's 100%. Now you have to hold the shares, and in an LLC, it's called a membership unit. You have to hold those shares for X amount of time to qualify for the deduction. It's longer in the foreign one, right? So there's also the foreign dividends received deduction, but you have to hold foreign shares for an entire year. So that's why you got to work with your professionals back home, because it's strategic, right? You can't just, oh, I'm gonna just buy the shares because I opened the company. No, there you got to buy them on a certain day, so that by the time it's time to do your taxes, you have the 365 days of ownership, so you qualify for it, right? So now in America, it's like 60 days. It's, you know what I mean? It's a whole different ball game if it's a local. But you can only take that deduction from a C corp. S corp doesn't work. LLC does, right? So unless it's LLC tax as a C corp, but it has to be a C corp. So it's a matter of having your planning together so that you get your tax situation straight. Because it can be two people doing exactly the same thing, and the one that ain't planning, they paying them taxes. So it's a matter of planning. But I don't know anyone, and we have straight up millionaires out here that we've relocated, and even them, I don't know a single person that has to pay U.S. taxes living abroad, because they have planning in place. All right, even though it's supposed to be 130,000, there are all kinds of other things that you can stack on top of that. I don't know a single person. They all are filing tax returns. You have to file a tax return every year, but I don't know a single person that's actually paying U.S. taxes while abroad. I ain't saying it don't happen, but I don't know any of them. Now, if you do it willy nilly, you'll be stuck. You'll definitely be stuck. Because there are certain things that if you file it, right, you don't owe anything for filing it. But if you don't file it, the penalty for not filing it is like $10,000 a day. Right? So there are certain things that, like, if you file it, there's no real penalty, and you don't have to pay any taxes on it. But if you don't file it, you very quickly rack up a very high bill with the IRS. One of those things is called an F bar. Go to the IRS's website and put in this into the little search bar, F bar. And it'll tell you why you have to file an F bar when you're overseas, and when. Not everybody even has to file one. When you have to file that F bar. Not even. You know what? It's funny because in the United States, because of the way the United States is designed, there are certain things that are set up, and it's not really even set up around wealth. It's really set up around race, right? But what it's really set up for is transparency. The more transparent you are, the less you have to pay, essentially, right? That's essentially the way it breaks down. And they're looking for economic activity, because when you hold money, you actually hurt the government, right? Economic activity is actually calculated by how many times the same dollar goes in and out of the bank. That's how, like, GDP and all of that is calculated. So if you make a bunch of money and that money sits in your bank account and it don't move, you're actually hurting the government, right? And you're hurting yourself, obviously, because inflation is going to eat that money away. But the government wants that money to move. So the more the money is moving back and forth and you're being transparent about that movement, the less of those kind of penalty payments are going to start applying to you. So that's really what it boils down to, more so than like rich versus not rich. Because the richer you get, some of those things start closing for you, right? Like there are caps to a lot of these deductions, and there are dollar amount caps to a lot of these these things that end up being tax beneficial to people. So the more money you make, you actually get to a point where there's no way around it, right? And even though your overall percentage might be less, and people are like, oh, they only paid 10%. But yeah, that 10% was more than if you'd have paid 100%, right? So what ends up happening is you get to a point where you hit the ceiling, but because you have so much money, they can say it's a smaller percentage, but your taxes are actually responsible for more than 50% of the taxes that are paid into the system, period, right? So people like to play with words and make it look like certain people ain't paying what certain people, you know what I mean? But you will actually get to a point where there's no way around it. Like once you get to a point where you start getting kicked out K1s, K1s are coming from like banking institutions, right? You have no control over them and you have to pay your K1s, right? So you'll get to a point where if you really get wealthy like that, that there's certain taxes that there's just no loopholes, there's no way around it. You can't not pay it. You have to pay, that set amount of taxes, and then people will play with the numbers and be like, oh, but it's only 5% of what they're worth, but that 5% might be $20 million. You know what I mean? So it's a completely different. Like if they don't pay that 5%, infrastructure stops, right? So it's one of those things where there's a lot of political speak around it, but if you actually look at the real numbers and you actually look at the shares of what's going into what, the wealthier you get, definitely the more you're paying, and the you get to a place where you just stop being able to loophole your way out of stuff, because a deduction is essentially a life event that would make it hard for you to pay taxes, right? It makes the tax like unreasonable and oppressive, right? So that's why like when you're doing your taxes, there'll be a question about like, well, did you get married? Did you relocate for a job? Did you this? Did you that? Right? And there are these deductions in place because the idea is if this thing just happened in your life, if you just had this change of circumstance, then regular taxes might be oppressive, right? So if you can prove that you had this situation in your life, then we'll go ahead and give you a deduction for that. But you'll get to a point where it's like nothing that happens in your life makes things oppressive anymore, right? So, and then, you can stave it off through like corporations and stuff like that. Obviously, like now your corporation is its own person and it has its own deductions. But there's a point in wealth where like none of that matters anymore. You're actually spending more to try to get around certain things and it still won't work than you would in just paying it. So at that point, you just start paying it. So it's a ways off, you know what I mean? But once you get there, you start realizing like, oh, all right. Now I see, the nonsense that's just politicized. And people don't understand it because they've never been in that realm. So they don't actually understand how money at that level works. But we've done so many family offices and we've dealt with so many like one percenters, like global one percenters through their family offices, that it gets to a point where it's like they don't even see their taxes, by the way. They're not like sitting at home trying to figure out deductions, right? But once like K1s start coming out, you start getting K1s, there's no way around it. Absolutely no way around it. You have to pay your K1s, right? And there's income that's not deductible as well, right? That you just have to pay no matter what. So once you get to a certain level, there's nothing around it at that point. You will be paying, X amount of tax. You can only reduce it so much. The anyone who's talking about like reducing taxes to zero is just lying. They're just lying on TikTok, for the likes or whatever. And they're betting that because there's only such a small percentage that are at that level that you'll never figure out that they're lying anyway because you'll never be at that income level to figure it out. Am I not particularly? My trust will be though. I won't be alive for it though. But we have clients that they approach us at that income level, right? And then they don't come to us for generational wealth trusts because they got generational wealth. They come to us for asset protection trusts. Yeah, but yeah, my trust definitely will be. I'll probably be passed on by then, though. But that's the beauty of the trust and the generational wealth trust. You're guaranteed to hit that mark. You just don't know when, but it's a guarantee as long as the trust is set up right. Compounding will guarantee you that you will hit, millionaire mark, and eventually billionaire mark if the trust is alive long enough. Um, but yeah, you just don't know how long it's going to take. Could you know? Yeah, if you have enough capital, you could know, right? Like, all right. So, for example, this bond here, it's 21.8 years left to maturity. So you know exactly how much time is left, based on this interest rate of 14.188%, right? That you're getting paid out as return on investment, and based on the 10% withholding tax, you could calculate how much you need to pay into this bond right now so that at the end of the bond, you made $1 billion, right? But you're going to need to have a ton of capital to do that, right? To get that level, of compounding return on investment. But yeah, you could calculate it and guarantee it. But that typically takes a ton of capital to do. So what you see with that type of stuff, if you see like rich grandparents doing that, right? So like a rich grandparent, they won't start, a generational wealth trust with $6,000, like your average person would. They'll start a generational wealth trust with $6 million, right? And then they'll calculate it like that 18.46% infrastructure bond. Let's say that was 20 years. It was an 8.5 year bond, right? But let's just say it was a 20-year bond. They could have calculated like, okay, if it's 18.46%, then less than 4 years, my money doubles, right? So let's just call it every 3 years. It's a little bit more. It's like 3.8, but let's just call it every 3 years for easy math, right? So if they know like, okay, cool, 18.46% guaranteed by sovereign debt, every 3 years my money doubles. I want each kid that I'm opening up a trust for to have $1 million, by the end, of the term. Okay, so then how much do I put in? If you start it with 100,000, in 3 years it's 200,000, right? Then 3 years after that, which is 6 years, right? It's 400,000, right? 3 years after that, which is 9 years, right? It's 800,000. 3 years after that, which is 12 years, right? Now we've popped a million, right? So they know that if they put in 100,000 and let it compound at that guaranteed rate, that they're going to be at a million in 12 years, over a million, like 1.2, right? So, or 1.6, I'm sorry. So yes, you can guarantee it, but then you need to have the significant capital to do that up front. So in those families where people, are wealthy in their own right, grandparents will often do that. They'll find an investment like one of these that has a very long time on it, a long enough time that they can guarantee that each grandkid they give $100,000, which might not be much to them if they're worth 20, 30 million, right? If they give each grandkid 100,000, that they know that at the end of the term, those are then going to end up having, access to over $1 million generational wealth trust. So you can. Typically, we're reaching out to people that have no shot at generational wealth. So typically, our people are setting up trusts beneath $10,000. So now they're just letting it ride, right? It's compounding at whatever interest rate it's compounding at. They might start with like an interest rate like this, but then eventually they're going to come out of this bond. The bond is going to be over, and then the corporate trustee is going to have to go in there and find new investments and reinvest, the profits from the bond. And so they got 30 years, and maybe they only got $2,000 in principal, and that $2,000 in principal is working over the next 30 years. There might only be $250,000 in there, but still, to go from $2,000 to $250,000 in 30 years is significant, right? And then the beauty of compounding is the bigger that number is, however many years it takes to double, the bigger that number is, the more impactful that double is, right? So you got $250,000 and it's 8 years to double. In 8 years, now it's $500,000. In 8 years, now it's $1 million. In 8 years, now it's $2 million, right? So that's why it's easier to make 10 million than it is to make 1 million, right? The 1 million is way harder to make, than the 10 million because the number is bigger when it doubles in compounding. And that's why you can't outwork money because it's going to be a curve that does like this. Right, so it's going to go real slow. You might even, when you started, you had to pay some brokerage fees or whatever, so you might even dip down, right, and then it starts doubling, and then it gets to a number where the double looks like this, right? So that's why compounding is amazing, and that's why you can't outwork money. Money's always going to be your hardest employee. Yeah, yeah. Money is always going to outwork you, which is a beautiful thing. And that's how you guarantee generational wealth to the next generation. Generational wealth planners, the people who come to us and they plan purely for generational wealth, it typically does not benefit them at all. So you got to have that mindset going as well. Your personal wealth plan and generational wealth plan are two different plans, right? If your plan is I'm gonna get rich and I'm gonna have this great successful business and I'm gonna be rich and then I'm gonna leave that money as generational wealth, the chances of that succeeding are like 10%, versus you can set up a generational wealth trust and the chances of that succeeding are 100%, right, on the money side, right? Now there's a, if you don't do education with your family, which is why we build out family constitutions and put education in there and all of that, your kids messing up the trust or your grandkids messing up the trust, that's a whole different story. But the money side of it's 100% guaranteed. Now your kids screwing it up, if they don't have the education, there's a 75% chance they do that on the first generation after you. And if you make it past that with the education, so you're in the 25%, they need to pass on the education as well. So there's a 50% chance that their kids screw it up if they don't have the right education. But after that, you're pretty much golden. So if you make it past the two generations, you now have a dynasty family. You're pretty much, statistically speaking, pretty much set in stone. Okay, with permanent residency permit, okay, that is a non-renewable permit where you don't have to renew. Yeah, so what ends up happening is you still have to go through your 7 years. 7 years is just the standard. Now, there are ways to get permanent residency in 3. That's only permanent residency. All right, so we're going to put that to the side. Typically, you need 7 years to do anything. And then at the end of the 7 years, based on whatever permit you had before, it would give you access to dual citizenship if you had the right permit. If you didn't have the right permit, all the other permits will only give you access to permanent residency directly. You can try to apply for dual citizenship, but it's going to be a hard road for you. If you had an ordinary residency permit, it's called a Class K ordinary residency permit. It is not a retirement permit. People who don't know what they're talking about often call it that. It's not a retiree permit. All right. Your age restriction on an ordinary residency permit is 35 years old, not 55. It's not a retirement permit. But if you have an ordinary residency permit, it will lead you directly to dual citizenship. The issue with the ordinary residency permit is you cannot actively work. You can have all the investments, all the bonds you want. The bonds are paying you every 6 months. You can do all of that, but you cannot actively take a job. You also cannot actively open a trading business. If it's a non-trading business, you're okay, but you cannot actively open a trading business. When you incorporate a trust, it's a non-trading business, so you're okay. Right? So that's kind of the downside to the Class K is you're not allowed to work. You're not allowed to make money here. If you prove to the government essentially that you can survive here without taking a job from a local person, you get citizenship. That's the way that that essentially works. Anything else, if you have an investor permit, which allows you to legally work here, you followed the law and you're working legally, so you haven't stolen a job from a local because you went through the proper, legal process, but that leads to permanent residency. It does not lead directly to dual citizenship because you are working here, right? So that's essentially the way that works in a nutshell, right? So once you get permanent residency, it's like you change whatever permit that you have to just residency. You're now just a resident, right? And then You don't have to renew that. What you do have to renew though is your ID, which everybody does. Like everybody, even if you were a citizen, your ID card would expire eventually, right? But when you're a permanent resident, you get a what's called a foreign certificate as an ID card, right? And then that ID card every 3 years you would renew that, and that's it. But you're still not a citizen. So depending on whatever political thing might pop up or whatever, it's in the United States, it would be the equivalent of you had a green card forever. What's happening to people with green cards right now? When they show up at the airport and they got a green card and they're getting turned away anyway, even though they're legally allowed in the United States and all of that stuff, right? So it's having a green card forever. So if politics shifts, right? Like the way they're shifting in the United States right now, right? But as a permanent resident, you can go ahead and like apply for like a work permit and all of that stuff, and you can open a company and all of that. Can the company you are interested in working for hire your business as a consultant? Maybe. It depends, because there's a form over function test, right? So if it's like you're consulting just the name alone, but you got to be there at 9 a.m. and you got to do everything like an employee has to do, right? Then they can definitely look at that and be like, this, you're not a consultant. Consultants don't have to listen to nobody. Consultants don't have to show up to employee meetings and all of that. Consultants have deliverables in their contract, and they meet those deliverables any way they want, anyhow they want, by the deadline, right? But they don't have to clock in every day. So if you are doing that, they actually see it as tax evasion, right? Because you should be paying employee taxes. You should be paying the equivalent of Social Security, which is called NSSF here. You should be paying the equivalent of Medicare, Medicaid, and all of that stuff. So like, if you're acting as an employee, but on paper that you're a consultant, even in the United States, this is true, you're actually committing tax evasion. So it just depends on the form over function of that. Can you legitimately have a U.S. company that's consulting with a Kenyan company? Sure, you can. It just has to be legitimate. And your team will be able to tell which would be best for me. Well, it's about what you qualify for, right? Citizenship is always best, right? But you may not qualify for it depending on what you want to do. So there's a lot of people who really want to own a business here, and that's fine. But that's going to affect their ability to get dual citizenship, at least under the current laws. That might change, right? But at least under the current laws, it's going to affect their ability to get dual citizenship, right? So then they might be restricted to permanent residency at that point, right? Instead of being able to get dual citizenship. Sometimes you can take two bites of the apple, right? And the way that works is through marriage, right? So you can be, an American married to a Kenyan, get an investor permit, and own a company and be doing work in Kenya. And as long as you stay married for 7 years, at the end of the 7 years, you can apply for dual citizenship via marriage to a Kenyan citizen. That's a whole different ballgame, right? So that way you get both bites of the apple to open up a business, even though you're not, a citizen, and make money in Kenya, which would typically bar you from then getting that dual citizenship. But because you're married for 7 years, you can apply as, hey, I've been married for 7 years, give me my dual citizenship that way, and still get dual citizenship, right? So it just, again, it goes back to planning. I know you guys be sick of hearing me say that, but it's the truth. What sets apart wealthy people from just rich people, and rich people from middle class people, and middle class people from poor people, it's typically planning. It's typically planning, right? The more you plan, the better position that you're in. So folks that all they do is they go to H&R Block and have somebody file their taxes, versus people who have a tax planner, right? A certified tax strategist, their taxes are completely different, right? And that it's just the same with everything. Anything that you're trying to get done, you want professional assistance in planning. so that as you hit those milestones, you already know what to expect. You've already set everything up to support the evidence that they're going to request. You have that evidence ready to go in advance, and you get everything as quickly as possible, and it works out the way that you planned it, precisely, because you want folks who have experience in doing it before to do the plan. So it's all planning. We've even had folks, and again, this requires marriage, which is the risky part, right? You come home and your spouse got somebody else in the bed. Now what? Right? But we've had folks that'll they'll take the almost three bites of the apple, right? So they'll have their investor permit, they'll be married. 3 years into marriage, you can ask for permanent residency, right? So that's that whole. Remember, I said permanent residency. Da, 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 da. So 3 years into marriage, you can say, okay, I've been married for 3 years. Ask for permanent residency. So now you stop paying the renewal on the investor permit because you have permanent residency, so you don't have to pay that renewal every year. So that saves you like $15,000, right, over the course of the 7 years. And then at 4 years later, you say, well, I'm still married, and so now I qualify for. I've been married 7 years. I'm going to apply for dual citizenship. It's still a harder process. There's more scrutiny on it or whatever, but you can get through that way, right? So it depends on your personal circumstances and what level of planning you've engaged in. Do I get a Kenyan passport? No, you do not get a Kenyan passport as a permanent resident. You are a permanent resident. You do not get a Kenyan passport, right? So our passport portfolio people, this is out of the question. Our people that are building passport portfolios, they always use a Class K permit because they need that additional passport. Even if they're married, they don't depend on the marriage. Because again, what if you're 5 years into the marriage, you come home and your spouse is in bed with another person? Now what? Right? You can end the marriage, but your 7 years starts all over again. Right? So now what are you going to do? If this is all part of your plan and you've built all of these structures and all these companies, and you've been depending on the marriage to do it, and the marriage don't work out, right? So they always depend on the Class K, even if they're married. They just utilize both. They have the Class K, which leads to dual citizenship, and they're married. And at the end of the 7 years, they'll go ahead and apply, typically via marriage, because less scrutiny on the money you've made typically. But yeah, that's if there's a passport portfolio client, and that's part of their dynasty building strategy, then they're not going to leave earning that passport up to the chance of having a great marriage or whatever. I did it though. Like, our marriage is great. It lasted all 7 years, whatever. But I definitely had a permit backup. But my dual citizenship is through my marriage. Correct. So you can, yes, same as the green cards that were reported to be deported to the United States. You're still a visitor. Correct. Permanent resident, yes, but you're still a visitor. And if the political shift changes, you know, do no. Our lawyers are only licensed in Kenya, so we don't do South Africa. However, we do get a lot of clients coming back from South Africa because how tough their immigration system is, and it's hard to understand. So they'll think that they're doing all the right things, and then they'll end up getting kicked out of the country, and they'll be like, well, wait a minute, I thought I filed all the right paperwork and I did it the legal way, but it's confusing. So there's that. But yeah, no, we don't assist in any South African immigration. No, only Kenya. We don't do Tanzania either. We actually, Tanzania is on our blacklist because Tanzania, you have to give up citizenship to get their citizenship, and there's literally no reason why you would do that, no matter what country you come from. So we do have clients that do that as part of their plan, but the country has to give them an incentive to do that. Tanzania does not. So it's a total loss for you to do that with Tanzania. The clients that do it the most are approaching the point where they need to set up their own family office, like a full-time family office to handle their investments, and then they pick a family member to be the sacrificial lamb, and that family member becomes a Singaporean. But Singapore gives them multiple incentives, cash incentives, to do that. So when you become a Singaporean, you have to give up all your other citizenships. And typically, by the time a family gets to that, they've built a passport portfolio. So that sacrificial lamb isn't just giving up like U.S. citizenship. They're typically giving up 4 or 5 passports to get the one Singaporean passport. But the government incentivizes them to do so. Not like Tanzania. So Tanzania is on our blacklist. We don't do anything with Tanzania as far as immigration, or even our clients that have already onboarded with us. Once you onboard with us, there's something called KYC, Know Your Client, which is becoming a universal standard, right? So once our clients onboard with us, we do set up things for them in other countries because we now have the KYC. You're onboarded with us. We can verify the Know Your Client, minimum standards. So we've set up, like for clients, we set up a pharmaceutical manufacturing company in Sierra Leone, set up, asset protection structures in Mauritius and the Seychelles, Vanuatu, and stuff like that. So once you're our client, we will do work in other countries, but we don't do any work in Tanzania. It just doesn't make sense. It's actually like hostile. It's like a hostile area right now towards us. So it doesn't make sense for us to engage there. No, not just because they don't have dual citizenship, because they've also passed regulation where no foreigners can engage in like 15 or 16 different categories of business, one of them being SMEs, which is small and medium enterprises. So if you ban, and I think Zimbabwe just did this as well, or they're talking about doing it, if you ban foreign investment from being engaged in SMEs, you're literally saying Hilton can show up and they can own a business because they're a billionaire foreign multinational corporation. Walmart, no problem. Let Walmart show up. No problem. Right. But, a black owned business that wants to come to Tanzania and open an orphanage to help black kids get off the street. SME, that's a small business. You're banned. Walmart, welcome in, right? Local black owned business, small business, you're banned. Now that don't make any damn sense, right? So it's not just about dual citizenship, which that one doesn't make sense either, but it's about being actively hostile. So if you're actively hostile to people who are actually there to help, but you're open to the giant conglomerates that are literally there to use you, and exploit you, it just doesn't make any sense. Yeah, you'll want to Google that. I feel bad. There's a lot of Black Americans that are there for some. I don't even know why. I guess it was like a vibes thing. Like people would visit and they'd be like, "Oh my God, I love it so much." Blah 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 blah. But now It's a very difficult place to survive in. That's exactly correct. We don't set people up for failure. And if we place somebody there, we be setting them up for failure. Absolutely. All right. No, sure. Nothing's impossible. Somebody will make it anyway, but the masses won't. You know. Also, the rule essentially violated the East African Area Agreement as well because they weren't specific. They should have been, but they weren't. So now in East Africa, East Africans that are part of the East African Federation, right? So you're talking about Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, Burundi, like those, countries that are in that coalition. They all had open borders. Like they were moving towards United States of Africa the most out of all of the African regions, in my opinion. They all have open borders. You're allowed to do business across the borders and all of that stuff, right? Now, Tanzania is in both East Africa and South Africa. They're in both regions. How that happens, who knows? But they're in both. So now their new rule actually blocks both, right? Because there's free access and free trade in East African. I assume there's similar stuff in South Africa as far as if you're in that region, right? So now Tanzania still has access, but they've just barred foreigners, which includes other Africans from those regions. So they're hostile to other Africans, right? But they still have access. So I'm waiting for like Kenya and all of those guys to like retaliate and be like, oh, okay, just fine. Then, you can't come do business here either. But instead of them saying like, Europeans or non-Africans or like whatever, they just threw a blanket. Y'all ain't allowed to do this. So we'll see what happens, but it definitely is not. It's not intelligent for a developing company to say, for the developing country to say the only people who can come help develop are the people who want to take advantage of us. It doesn't make any legitimate and logical sense anyway. The only sense it makes is if government officials are taking bribes and they want big bribes, so they only want big companies to show up, that are going to pay the bribes quietly and not, smaller, businesses that are going to make noise on the internet about, oh, I tried to open up an orphanage and the government tried to get a bribe from me. So that's the only way that the Tanzanian rule makes any sense at all. Yeah, no, do you? You know what I mean? If that's where you plan on go, do what you want to do. Just do your due diligence. I'm just letting it be known why we don't engage. But if you want to go there, go there. We'll never tell you what to do. Yeah, yeah. I'm with you on that one. All right. Any other questions on any of this stuff? Any other questions on any of this stuff? Yes, it should be a link in the bio. If you want to set up a consultation with us. Should be a link in the bio. McKenna, that looks like a Meru name. Let's see. Yep. All of these should be business accounts. So no matter which stream you're if you're looking at YouTube, if you're looking at Facebook, if you're looking at TikTok, it should all be business accounts. So there should be a link in the bio. Yes, we are vertically integrated. So we have a law firm in Mombasa. We have our own architectural firm. We have our own general contractor. So when it comes to setting up estates and setting up trusts, we're all completely vertically integrated in that. Medical tourism, we refer people out to Traverse Culture for that. So we've relocated a lot of people that have whatever medical issues they have, and then Traverse Culture specializes in medical tourism. So we stay in our lane. You know what I mean? So what we do is we'll set up you know a partnership with Traverse Culture to go ahead and handle any of that medical tourism type of stuff. So we've had people come, maybe they need dialysis and all that stuff. We can get everything set up before they come and fit their schedule and all of that stuff via Traverse Culture. We used to do it ourselves, but like I said, they're specialists. So if we find a specialist in an organization that's legit, and Traverse Culture is legit, they're the only other diaspora owned organization that is legit. So if we find another organization that's legit, we have no problem, doing business with them and sending our clients over to them and all of that. So anyone who comes through and needs that medical tourism type of stuff, or not even medical tourism, but like they want to come spend 2 weeks, but they got to do dialysis every other day, or every 3 days or something like that. We'll match the level of dialysis, like whatever the medical technology level that they were having back home, will match that here and make it happen for them through Traverse Culture. We used to do it ourselves, but now we let the specialists do it. Hey, what's going on from Texas? How's it going over there? Today, it feels like it's about 90 degrees here at the beach. Nice sunshiny day. I guess I can take down the bond information back there, huh? There we go. There we go. Nice sunshiny day. Great question. So yeah, I'll be playing some tennis later today, but I'm definitely waiting for the sun to be on the other side of the sky. Be doing that this evening. We have been on for over 2 hours. So if you guys got any questions about what we do, any questions about what we spoke about today, is there still an opportunity to buy bonds with the government? I heard about that deal. Yeah. So right now, the deal that we're doing includes everything, right? So it includes immigration, it includes land ownership, it includes us building you a 2-bedroom, 1,600 square foot home, brand new. It includes your trust fund that's going to manage the bonds, and it includes actually buying the bonds. We're doing that at 185,000. So you get a brand new house, you own your own land here by the beach. We'll build you that standard 2-bedroom house with an office. The office can be converted into another bedroom, so it can be a 3-bedroom house. So you're getting all of that for under $200,000. And there's an upgrade for a car. If you want a brand new car, there's an upgrade for that. And so that is the deal. It is only going to be available until February, because we need to have enough time to buy all the bonds within 1 year. right? So it is only available until February. You cannot customize the house, or else we got to change the price, right? So all the prices are set up based on everything you did. So the land is right outside of Deanny Beach. You can't customize that either. All the pricing is based on the pricing that we get for all these things that's already established. So if you want the special price, you'll the land is right outside of Deanny Beach. Really cool area. I myself have a house in that same area, so I ain't putting y'all in a place where I wouldn't live. So the land is right outside of Deanny Beach. You'll have land by the beach, walking distance to the beach. You'll have a brand new house built on that land. We do all the county permits and all of that stuff within that price point. You'll have the trust fund set up. You'll have your immigration set up, and the whole deal with that. And you can upgrade to a car if you'd like. That's a good deal. When this also include a visa, long-term residency? Yeah. So your immigration is completely included in that. So you'll get a whatever permit makes sense for you. So typically we're looking at a Class K permit, which is an ordinary residency permit, which leads directly to dual citizenship. So it's priced to lead you to dual citizenship, right? The only thing that's not included is your actual, like your dual citizenship, and your renewals of your permit aren't included. So when we get to dual citizenship, we'll do that. We can never include that. A lot of people want us to include that, but we would have to like charge something outrageous to do it, because who knows what the price is going to be in 7 years. That's the issue with that. A lot of people are like, oh, include the dual citizenship fee, but we don't like. So I'll give you a really good example. 4 years ago, it costs, the issuance fee on a permit was 100,000 shillings a year, right? So when you got a max Class K permit, which is 3 years, it was 300,000 shillings for that permit. We ran a special, right? You can go back in time on the Facebook and all that and look at this. We ran a special one year telling everybody they are changing the prices. It is not going to be cute. And a lot of folks were like, no, we'll wait. Da, 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 da. They changed it to 250,000 shillings per year. So now 1 year costs as much as all 3 years used to cost. And we didn't know how much it was going to go up, right? So now it's 750,000 shillings just for the issuance fee. That's not the application fee. That's not the biometrics fee. That's not the foreigner certificate fee. That's not the you need 100,000 shilling surety bond, to get your none of those fees. The legal fees and none of that. That's the issuance fee at the end, right? So that cost of the permit from like four or $5,000 to get the permit, the max permit, all the way up to $10,000, $12,000, to get the permit. So those folks who waited, some of them got priced out. Some of them couldn't even afford to do it anymore, right? So that becomes the issue when people are like, oh, charge me for something that I don't qualify for the next 7 years. What if you make a mistake and you mess up your own qualification? What if you go take a job and now you're not qualified to get the dual citizenship because now you made employee income while you were here and you didn't consult us about it, and then we get to the 7 years and you don't qualify anymore, right? How do we refund you? You know what I mean? So the whole thing of like, let me bundle in, my future dual citizenship, there's just not a really good way for us to do that. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the question. Is the deal in your bio? No, the deal's not in the bio, but keep your eye on this account. There's going to be like videos that come out within the next like 24 hours on that deal. It's only going to last until February. You can also email us and we'll send you all the deliverables and like everything that's included and all of that. So that link is in the bio. The email link and the website are definitely in the bio. You can also get into a consultation with us. The price of the consultation is credited against any services that you order during the consultation, right? So you can't have a consultation with us and come back a month later and be like, oh, can I get a credit? No, right? But if you onboard with us during the consultation, then we credit, that back to whatever it is that you're doing. All of those methods will apply. We are going to start advertising that holiday special literally within the next 24 to 48 hours. So you'll start seeing videos on this TikTok. You'll start seeing videos on our YouTube. You'll start seeing videos on Facebook. You'll probably start seeing advertisements pop up. If you're in the algorithm, if you're in our algorithm, that'll talk about it. So you'll start seeing that relatively soon. Any other questions? What's medical insurance? I love it. I'm paying for all my employees to be on what's called Britam Malali. I think it's a great coverage. My entire family is also on Britam Malali, so I whatever my employees get, I get. And so I just had to have a kidney stone removed. And and it cost a half a million Kenyan shillings to do it. I did it like laser lithoscopy, so like laser, like surgery, no scar, no nothing like that. And I paid nothing, paid absolutely zero. There was no copay, no nothing. The insurance paid all of it, right? They left a what is it called, a double J. Anyway, they left this thing inside of my body so that it healed, with no scar, and that it healed as best as it could heal. So there was this thing that went from my kidney to my bladder inside my body, right? Holding everything like open so everything healed properly. So that I had to come back 6 weeks later and have that removed. Cost me nothing. Then we had a follow up, to see what the stone was actually made of, and like if I need to do any dietary changes or anything like that. Cost me nothing, right? So I've never had a situation where I had to pay anything except for my baby. We wanted him to have the US vaccines that are not included on this side because he's going to be going to the US and back and forth and whatever, right? So like they do like measles and mumps, but not rubella, because maybe rubella is not a thing here, but it's a thing, in the US. So we do MMR in the US. So those vaccines that were outside of this government's vaccination schedule that we had to pay for, which has never been more than like $10. So that's been it. So so I've had major surgeries. I was hospitalized for like 3 days with the stone surgery. So it wasn't an outpatient or anything like that. Everything else was outpatient. The stent, that's what's called J stent. The stent removal was outpatient and all of that. So it's like a half day. I still had to go under anesthesia to have it removed and all that. But did all those things. None of it cost me a dime. And the premium that I pay is like, how much would that be? For the whole family, I guess I pay about $800 a year for everybody, right? So it's everybody, included. So definitely less than what I was paying in the US. I was paying a heck of a lot more in the US, and there was always a copay in the US. Every time I went to the doctor, $50 copay just to go, right? And then if something, was ordered, then there's a copay on that, and blah 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 blah. So yeah, pretty good. How difficult it is to access cash from the US? Bank accounts is not difficult at all. There's an app that you'll want to download called SendWave. SendWave works identical to Zelle. And so what'll end up happening is you download the SendWave app. When you come here, you get a local cell phone number from Safaricom, and then you'll get access to something called M-Pesa. M-Pesa is superior in every way, shape, or form to Apple Pay and Google Pay, but it's very similar to it. And you would be able to go into SendWave and literally send money directly from your US bank account to your Kenyan cell phone through that like online, or not online, but digital pay account. And it's free. There's no charge, just like Zelle. There's no charge. So it would go directly from your debit card directly to your cell phone instantaneously. There's very little delay, if any delay. And sometimes there's a system problem with SendWave. It's very rare. I've been using SendWave for over 7 years, like maybe 8 years now. And every time there's a system delay, they text me immediately and they're like, hey, we're working on getting your money to you, and we're going to send you a text message and let you know when that money has been received. We're sorry there's a delay right now. And typically within 30 minutes that comes through. And in all those years that I've been using it, that's to my recollection, that's happened 3 times. Right? So typically you press the button, it's like you swiped your debit card and the money is immediately in your account here in Kenya. So it's not difficult at all. Typically, when folks are coming over and they're coming over for like an investor tour or something like that, we tell them to like have $100 in their pocket, maybe in 20s or whatever, in case they want to eat at the airport or need to get a taxi or something like that, to be able to get to the mall to get the Safaricom account, right? And then once they have that Safaricom account, they can do everything through SendWave. And you set up the SendWave locally just in case there are like that whole thing I was talking about a little while ago with the know your client stuff and becoming a international kind of standard. They may ask you to verify your identity, hold up your driver's license, and take a picture of yourself. So you want to do all that while you're at home, which to make it easier. In case you don't have service here, you could set it up here, but when they try to call you on a verification question or something, then if your phone doesn't ring, then you're going to get stuck. So we typically recommend that people just set it up at home and all of that and get all your verification stuff out of the way, and then you're good. And then when you come here, even if you don't have local service from back home, you would still be in a situation where you would be able to verify everything, via text message. So if you don't have voice service, you typically have text service when you're on Wi-Fi. And even better than that is a lot of our people sign up with like Google Voice numbers. So they always have both call and text service anywhere in the world as a free service from Google. So very, very, very simple to get access to money while you're in Kenya specifically. And M-Pesa is used everywhere. There's nowhere that M-Pesa is not used. Even government services, you can even use M-Pesa to pay for like, permit fees and government services and stuff like that. Any other questions on any of that? All right. Thanks for the likes, Momo. All right. Any other questions that anybody got? 20,000 shillings is around 155 US dollars. Probably. Yeah, probably. 50,000 is around 386. So that sounds right. The rate fluctuates, but it's right now it's typically somewhere between 127 to 129 to 1. So $1 is like 100 and 20, either, I guess on the low side it could be even 125, but $1 is either 125, 126, 127, 128, 129 things. It doesn't really change daily, at least not right now. It changes like weekly, I would say, but even that change is small. Like it might go from 127.20 to 127.80. You know what I mean? So the change is relatively small. It's pretty steady. Can you briefly repeat what you said about getting Google Voice? Yeah, a lot of the clients will get a Google Voice number. Just go to your Gmail, or like be logged into your Gmail or whatever, and then go to voice.google.com. And if you don't already have a Google Voice, it'll open up like a whole thing where you'll pick a phone number. You can pick a phone number typically anywhere. I think sometimes it pushes back if it's not like where your IP address is, but you would pick a phone number. That phone number would be attached to your Google account, and then from there, on like Wi-Fi, you would be able to get calls, send calls, get text messages, send text messages, and all of that. So a lot of people will use that Google Voice thing, so that they have a number forever. Now you have to use it. Like if you just let it sit there, Google will take it back. But you send a text message once a month or something like that, or have your text messages from like your bank set up on that, so that every time you swipe a card, it goes to like that Google Voice number. That'll keep it active. But yeah, you'll have a number for as long as Google is giving out free numbers. I've had a Google Voice number for 20 years. So, Google has never threatened to end the service, but it is a free service, unless you have a business account. If you have a business account, then it's a more robust service, and then there's something that you would like pay for that. But by more robust, I mean like when you call the Google Voice and it's a paid one, it's like thank you for calling whatever, how may I direct your call type of thing, and like press one for John. So like it becomes that type of setup. But your standard Google Voice is just a regular old phone number, essentially. Now, fair warning, there are certain, like banks or whatever that will detect that it's what's called a VoIP. So it's a voice over internet protocol, right? So they'll detect that it's like a Google Voice number, not like a landline number or a cell phone number. And they'll be like, oh, we don't accept that, whatever. So there are times when you'll try to use your Google Voice number and it'll say no. But overall and in general, just to have a number, and especially just to have like a way for like family to contact you, it's just an app. Like once you get the number, there's an app that you can download that'll show you everything. But even if you don't have the app in Google, you would forward to whatever number you wanted. So you could have it forward calls, to your phone number, where somebody calls Google Voice, it rings on your phone, or you can get the app and the app will ring. The app is better, bar none. The app is better because, if you no longer have a U.S. number, the app still works. Yeah, yeah, no problem. Yeah, Google Voice is definitely. I think it's the best, but maybe I'm just biased because I've had it for so long. But yeah, I definitely think it's the best way to make that happen. Because if you have the app, then you can use your local service. Like you don't need Wi-Fi. You can use your local data to make calls through Google Voice and receive calls through Google Voice. So you can just be walking around and your phone will ring, and to the person calling you, it's just a local call. It doesn't cost them anything. And then if you call through Google Voice, it's only costing you data. So, if you have like a data plan that you're dealing with in the country you're in, which that's the way it is here, you pay for plans. And there's limited data, limited minutes. It's like the old days, it's like the 80s. It's like the 80s where you pay for all of that stuff, but you're only spending data when you use it, if you have the app. All right. Any other questions? I'm here every day around this time. I've been here for 2 hours and 40 minutes. I try to get here right around like 5:30 a.m. Sometimes it's still dark here till like 5:45 a.m. But my time, because I know that's like 10 o'clock East Coast in the PM, so I wake up early and try to do this around the same time every day. And then we'll have some special things where like I'll be on at night, so there won't be this kind of great background. But it'll be like early in the day, US. So I remember a buddy had a landline phone in Thailand many years ago. No, I'm not. Right. This is part of my discipline, right? Like I'm building business discipline, and I've been in business for over 20 years. So, but I'm still reinforcing discipline. I hate getting up in the morning. I do what I don't like, so I train myself to be able to do that for business. So, the discipline is never ending. You have to keep it going. Yeah, I feel like not Thailand. I used to live in the Philippines long, long, long time ago. Maybe 25 years ago, actually. And I had, what was it called? Magic Jack. It was brand new. Um, and you could plug it into your computer, and then it had the phone cord for like the landline phones. But you can plug it into, I'm trying to remember. I think you could plug it into anything. You could plug it into like a plug in the wall, and this Magic Jack thing would work as early Wi-Fi. So it worked on oh Jesus, what were they called? 14K modems or something like that, right? Which was even lower than the 56K modem. Jesus, I'm aging myself. But but so I used to have like a landline phone that you plug it in and then you plug the phone thing in. So it was a landline number, but it worked anywhere there was internet. Oh man, just the mental image of that is hilarious now. But anyway, cost of a car in Kenya, Corolla or Camry type of vehicle. Okay, so personally, I feel like getting a good new car and a good used car is the same price. So there's that. I don't know why people be running away from, maybe it's an American thing, like what it costs you in America, whatever, but people be running away from getting a new car. I think if they're the same price, and you get a warranty on the new car. So we lean into those warranties. So the car partnerships that we have, the smallest warranty is I think it's 3 years, 100,000 kilometers, whichever comes first. And our best warranty is is it 10 year or 7 year? Let's go with 7 years just to be safe. 7 years, 200,000 kilometers warranty. And there are different classifications to those cars. So you're looking at, for a brand new car, full warranty, the whole nine. Trying to think what our cheapest one is. I feel like the lowest price one is in the $25,000 range, which is the same as the United States, right? For a brand new car. Now, you can get a used car in the same range. Sometimes those used cars are like higher luxury brands. So you can get like a what is it called? An RX 450, which out here is called a Toyota Harrier, but it's a Lexus RX 450 for the same price. But it's old, like it's like a night, like it's like a 20, probably like a 2019, right? And you have no idea what's wrong with it, right? There ain't no Carfax, so you don't know if it was involved in a flood. You don't know what's going on. And when something breaks on it, you got to pay out of pocket, right? So for most of our clients, when they get a car package included, when something breaks on it, the warranty covers it, right? And you go from there. And we typically do like SUVs. So there's the Renault, which is a French car. The Renault Duster is the base model. There's a Renault Kilios, which is like a luxury model. That's in our inventory. There's a Suzuki Jimny. There's a base model and a luxury model of that. There are Cherries, which is a Chinese car, which we love. There's three models of that. So there's a base model, a mid model, and like a high end luxury model of that. So yeah, it just depends. Car parts and repairs about the same because some of the stuff is imported. So imported stuff have the same cost. So then it becomes the labor charges, like what's going on with the labor charges. With the labor charges are always lower. So yeah, we typically only offer SUVs. We do have one car that's what would be considered like a hybrid instead of an SUV. So the hybrid car, um, so the hybrid car, is I think it's a Toyota. I got to get the name of it, but it's like super super luxury on the inside. So some people go for that. It's not as high. We typically go for the ones with the highest ground clearance, right? So that if you do get on one of those like off-roading situations or a really rough road, like you're still good. So that's why we lean into the SUVs. Yeah, definitely solid deals. I mean, you can. Obviously, you can get a Range Rover and you can get a, all of that stuff and pay, but you're going to pay, like, say, like you get a BMW that's $100,000 in the United States, you're going to pay $100,000 here. Maybe a little bit more, maybe 120 because of the import fees or whatever. So you can do that. Like, if that's what you're used to doing and you got the money to do that, you can absolutely. But our bundle packages don't reflect like those kinds of payments. We're really, really focused on like most of your money going into your house, and like if you have the bond bundle, then you're getting that passive income. So most of the money is going into the, you now have passive income and don't have to work anymore, and the house. So the car is like, the car works and it's under warranty. Like if you want to go get a Beamer later, that's on you. But we're going to set you up for success, not failure with depreciating assets. Yeah, and he got to be careful because they'll just take the money and ship it, right? But you ship a car from America to Kenya, you're going to have a problem because the car is not legal in Kenya, period. Like no matter what car it is, it could be an e-car. The only way that that car is legal in Kenya is if it's a postal car. If you go to a USPS auction and buy a postal vehicle, then the steering wheel will be on the right side of the car because they don't have the steering wheel on the same side of the car here. And there's people who do that. They will import a US car and think that they're going to be able to get it on the road, which is a 100% lie. The only U.S. vehicles that can get put on the road are diplomatic vehicles. So you would have to be the ambassador to Kenya for the United States, which you are not, right? Or a special purpose vehicle. And that's for like business owners typically, right? So if you're like, I'm gonna come to Kenya and I'm going to open up a ambulatory service, then you can bring in U.S. ambulances and get a special permit for a special purpose vehicle where the steering wheel is on the wrong side. Farm equipment, typically you're in like that cage, so that's okay. Four-wheelers and motorcycles, that's okay. Because you typically just have that one steering device. But there are even some of those things where there are the two steering wheels, and you even got to get that figured out. So typically, if it's a special purpose vehicle, then you can get a special permit, but you got to get that permit in advance. Or if it's a regular car, it has to be left-hand drive, right? So there's people that make those mistakes. Those mistakes typically come from people trying to do things on their own to try and save money, and they end up in a horrific situation where they now have to pay the import taxes because you done put that thing on a container and brought it here. So the government don't want to hear it. Now you got to pay the import taxes and the VAT and all of that stuff to get the car in, and then as soon as the car comes in, they impound it because it's a legal car, and it ain't street worthy, and now you're screwed. So you then had to pay all that money to get it in the country, and then they impound it and go destroy it because it's not legal to be on the street, and all of that to try and save a couple dollars and do things yourself in a country where you don't know the rules. So we see people who are like that, hard-headed people for real, who are like that, and they burn so much money being hard-headed. And what can you do? You can only lead a horse to water. You can't make him drink, right? So we see that a lot. Yeah, man. Yikes. Yes. Yes. It's horrible. Horrible. And they call our law firm. Oh, we heard you're American. Can you help us out? They crying on the phone. And we're like, you were supposed to call us before you put that thing on a container. And we get that a lot. People will ship a container, be like, my container is coming on Friday. Can you clear it? What? What's in the container? Because depending on what's in the container, there's something called KEBS, KEBS, right? And KEBS is, what is it like in the United States? KEBS. It's the Kenyan Bureau of Standards. I don't even know what the U.S. equivalent to KEBS might be. I think there's multiple equivalents. Like USDA is one equivalent if it's like food, right? FDA is another equivalent if it's like medicine, right? So KEBS is like all of those things kind of combined. So depending on what you're putting in the container, there are KEBS agents in every country. So you're actually supposed to have a KEBS inspection and get a sign off and a certificate before the container leaves the country, right? So then what ends up happening is these people will be done sent that container talking about like, oh yeah, I hired my own, shipping company, and the shipping company be like, cool, we'll take your money and send that thing to Mombasa, no problem. And then it shows up in Mombasa, and you're staring at a 400,000 Kenyan shilling fine right off the bat for not having the KEB certificate. Now they're going to inspect the container, and they're going to find every violation in that container, and you're going to end up with a million shilling fine. Welcome to Kenya, right? Because you did things the wrong way, right? So please do not be hard headed. You ain't got to come to us, right? I'm not, trying to sell us to you as the end all be all, but you need a professional, right? If it's not us, then we recommend go talk to Traverse Culture. If it's not them, then we recommend going to the U.S. Embassy and getting a list, because I'm not aware of any other local folks that are diaspora affiliated that are legitimate, right? I'm just not aware. I know I'm aware of a whole bunch of other folks offering relocation services, but if it's not Traverse Culture, go to the embassy and ask the embassy for a list of their lawyers. Okay, so us, Traverse Culture, embassy. Do yourself a favor. But please do not be up there talking about you going to use Chat GPT and figure this thing out, because you're not. It's not going to work. All right, Chat GPT going to straight up lie to you. We've seen that happen multiple times. And when you get here, you're going to be upside down. By the time you're done paying the fines, you're going to be out of money. All right, so please make sure that you deal with the profession. I saw some container homes. Do you know of any builders? Is that a thing in Kenya? It is. You can build a container home, but you're not going to save money doing that. It's going to be the same cost as having like a concrete house built. So maybe convenience, but if you ship in an already manufactured container home, the import fees are going to be wild. So I don't even think, that's going to work out for you, unless it's one of those situations where I'm coming next month, um, and I need the home to be ready for me by the time I get there, which that in itself is a bit complicated, because where's the home going? What land do you own? But it's possible. It's possible to do a land deal like within that month. So if the idea is like, I'm coming next month, I need my house there, I need to be able to live in that house, so I'm essentially going to pay double for the container home, and like I want the shipment to arrive the day before I arrive, and the people to install it on the concrete slab. Like, okay, I guess, you know what I mean. Convenience always costs more money, so if that's the case, then so be it. What we typically do is we just build the people the house, and then we have like an apartment complex. We put up in an apartment for the 9 months it's going to take for that to be done. You know what I mean? But it's about the same. Yeah. It typically isn't. It typically isn't worth it. It really is about the same. Now, back in the day, it used to be that containers were way cheaper. But that's not the way anymore. Do you think people should ship appliances and furniture from the U.S. or just buy it there? For the most part, buy it here, right? There might be like some furniture. You got a grandfather clock, stuff like that. Fine. Like furniture, no problem. The issue with the appliances is most of them can't plug in here because the U.S. voltage is 120. Kenyan voltage is like 230, 240, which is the same as UK voltage. So like there's certain stuff that we like Ninja appliances. They don't have a Ninja store here. So we order like our Ninja Combi and like the swirly, like the ice cream maker and all of that stuff, and like the air fryer and all that. We order that from UK Amazon, which your regular Amazon account logs you into the UK Amazon, right? So when that shows up, the electric is the exact same. Are the homes built on a slab or pier and beam? Electrical hookup, solar panels, backup generators. You can do all of that. So you can build the home with like what they call a floating slab, which is like your pier and beam type of situation, or you can just have a concrete slab. And then typically people are hooked up to the electric anyway as like a little backup, but you can then upgrade to solar off grid. And then the folks that aren't solar off grid typically have a diesel generator as a backup, no matter what. So you can upgrade to solar off grid and then still have the electrical hookup, but just basically not use it. Like we got a guy who his electric bill has been 13 cents a month for the last like year and a half. So he's on the electric, but he has his solar takes care of everything. Um, or you can just be completely off grid, have your solar handle everything, and just make sure you do your maintenance, right? Because if you let the batteries, go and you're not doing maintenance, then in a year or two you're gonna have to buy a new system, right? So as long as you just stay up on your maintenance, you'll be all right. And then there's the backup generators where you're on electric, and if there's any blackout or anything like that, your backup generator just kicks in. Oh, thank you. It's been 20 years. That's what it is. Thank you. Yeah, we're definitely here. Yeah, reach out to us. Internet access, school fees for student. Oh, school fees. The school fees like anywhere else. You're going to pay, based on the school that you want to go to. There are elite schools here. There are elite international schools, and they got, payments that match, and the whole like they choose what students they let in, and competitive, and all of that stuff. And then there are public schools. Some public schools are top notch as well. Some public schools are better than the international schools, which is similar to China. In China, public schools are typically better than the international schools, but not all of them. There are schools out in the bush that ain't even got a blackboard. And so when we find those, we typically try to sponsor them and buy them the supplies that they need, but they exist. So that completely depends on you. Internet access is there, right? So there's typically fiber optic internet access in most places where you want to live, and then there's also Starlink. So I try not to do business with any Musk companies, but there is Starlink out here and it works really well. I can't lie about that. I don't have it. I use fiber optic, but it's out here. In my opinion, as far as like what you have access to, in my opinion, Kenya is number one. Some people who lean into like medical needs would say South Africa is number one. But my issue with South Africa and them technically, yes, having number one in medicine, Kenya is number two in medicine on the continent. That's technically true. My issue with South Africa are there's still whites only spaces in South Africa. And some of that highest level of medicine are in those whites only spaces. So is it really number one for someone that looks like me? Not necessarily. What's up, buddy? Hi. Good morning. I see you woken up. Yeah. So yeah, we're actually looking into developing an international school that has a focus on like real continental African history. So like when you look at international schools, they always have a curriculum attached. The same thing in China as well. I lived in China for a while. So there's like British curriculum, international school, French curriculum, Canadian curriculum. There's even American curriculum, international schools. I have never seen an African curriculum international school, ever, or even like Pan African. So we're looking at doing something like that on the coast. So we'll see. Shipping Amazon products from the UK takes a long time. No, no, absolutely not. The longest it's ever taken me to get the product delivered has been like 4 days. Now, shipping costs are expensive. No, but the way Amazon does it is they do what's called DDP shipping, which is or DPP shipping, which is duty prepaid, right? So the import fees and all of that are paid by Amazon, right? And so that like doubles the shipping cost. So the shipping isn't particularly expensive, but they pay the fees at the port for you. Now, the good thing though is with Amazon, they refund you what it didn't cost. So they make an estimation of like, all right, this is what the shipping fees are going to cost. They never ask you for more money. And then like a month later, you just get this random $10, per item, refund for what they didn't pay for the shipping. right? So you do have to pay like the import fees and all of that stuff. So there's that. But you're getting, I only order stuff from Amazon that I cannot find here, right? If it's not electric, like if it's not something I need to plug in, I just order it from the US. And it's the same thing. Still same thing with the just a couple of days. Apps for Netflix, Apple TV, Prime Video. Apple TV. Netflix you get cheaper. So we'll take care of Netflix because I'm positive about Netflix. Apple TV. I don't know. Prime Video, you'll get a we see you're traveling thing, right? And so you'll be really super limited on what is accessible. What we did was there is a router called, oh geez, what's it called? You can get it on Amazon. Um, oh man, I can't think of the name of the router. Go to expressvpn.com. They have their own router. It's like their own in-house router. They have two of them. You want the big one. You don't want like the little MiFi one. When you get that router, and then of course you have to pay for ExpressVPN, obviously. But when you get that router, anything that goes across your Wi-Fi goes through wherever you have your router set to. So like when we turn on, like I use my entertainment system to access those things, right? So when we turn on our entertainment system, which for mine is it's an Xbox, right? So I go through Apple TV on the Xbox, Prime Video on the Xbox. All of that goes through the router, and so it VPNs back to the United States. So I see U.S. Prime Video, U.S. Disney Plus, Disney Plus, Hulu, all of that. It's not available outside the United States, right? And I'm not sure about Apple TV. I feel like Apple TV is the same way. So I have all of them. I watch Apple TV. I watch all of those things, but it's because of the router that I have. If you do like a VPN, like on your phone or like on your kit, those don't work very well. But if you have the actual router from the VPN company, that has worked very, very well for us. And essentially, it works wherever you go. So like, we can unplug the router. We go to China a lot for business. We can unplug the router, put it in our in our suitcase, and take it with us, and plug it in when we're in China, and it'll get around the Great Firewall of China. Yeah, you can go to expressvpn, .com or whatever, and even when you like try to buy the router on their website, I think they forward you to like their Amazon shop. So you can buy it on Amazon, you can get it Amazon Prime and just bring it with you. And then you're good to go. And us, we actually bought it here because we weren't aware. And then so we had already moved here, and then so we did the same thing. We did the Amazon thing and shipped it to us. Cost us more because we had to pay the import fees. But yeah, if you just throw it in your luggage, it's your home router. Like your home stuff, you're not typically supposed to pay import fees on. So it's your home internet router. So you won't get charged a fee when you come in, or at least you shouldn't. Sometimes people will press, but they'll have to mark your luggage, and they typically don't do it for one electronic. But if your luggage comes off of the plane and there's a chalk X on it, that chalk X means that customs is about to mess with you, right? So if there's something in there, if you got a bunch of stuff in there, when you get to customs, just be like, hey, I have a declaration to make. Yeah, yeah, you can take it with you wherever, and then you just plug their internet connection into your router, and then of course your Wi-Fi password is whatever you set it at home. So it'll just kind of show like it's your home network, but it'll filter everything through that VPN. It does mean, however, you are paying U.S. prices for everything. So there's that. Netflix is going to be cheaper though, because Netflix, as soon as you get here, like cancel your Netflix and then come here and then like restart your Netflix. And when you sign up for it, don't use the VPN, right? When you sign up for it, it's like 300 shillings a month. So it's like, and that's like your full Netflix. So it's like 300 shillings a month. It might be, maybe it's more. Maybe it's even if it's 900, right? 900 shillings is like, I don't know, uh, $5, 5.99 or something like that. But the 300 shillings, which I'm almost positive is what I pay, 300 shillings is like $1.50 or something like that. So it's cheaper once you come here on the Netflix side. But it's like you can't convert your US account to the other price. So you have to just go ahead and let your US one lapse and like cancel it out and then just start a new account when you're here in Kenya. And there's a lot of things that are like that. I can't think of everything off the top of my head, but there's a lot of things that if you pay for them here, you get the local rate. You can bring those. You can bring those if you want. You still got to pay like your import fees and all of that, but you can bring them. Sometimes depending on like the golf cart slash ATVs. Well, yeah, no, you can bring them. Yeah, you can bring them because they're not road. The ATV might be roadworthy, so that's one thing, but the golf cart's not a roadworthy thing. Yeah, no, they should. They should. You're right to be scared. So that's normally what ends up happening when people are like, "Ooh, I found this and it's cheaper. Let me just import it." That's when they find out that it's not cheaper when the import fees hit. And that's the point. The point is so that you're not circumventing local, you know, manufacturers and all that by importing everything. But some things it works out. Like we have like building supply stuff that even with the import fee, it's either cheaper for us to buy it from China or it is the same price, but we'll get a higher quality, right? So we can provide a better, product or a better house to our clients for the same price by importing it from China. So those things are like strategic, imports where you just eat the cost to get a much better product. But and it's the same thing. Like we have like a ninja latte espresso thing, which is really good actually. And then we have like an oven that cooks. It steams your food on one side of the oven, and on the other side of the oven, it air fries it, and then on the other side of the oven, it's like broiling it. Like it does everything at once. That's really awesome as well. And so we can like I put rice in it the other day. I washed my rice, put the rice in, covered the rice with water, and then like grilled like chicken and asparagus like on top. And so in 18 minutes, it cooked the rice and grilled the chicken and steamed the asparagus all at the same time. It's crazy. It's called a combi, right? So it combines like all those things in one. So that's not on the market here. So we imported that and like paid the fees and stuff like that. So if it's specialized and it makes sense, you know what I mean. But for the most part, you can pick up all that stuff here. Cheaper to buy and ship from China. Just like those like building supplies because we're buying like enough tiles to build a house. You know what I mean? And like, five or six toilets and like, you know what I mean? So if you're just buying one thing, it's not. It's typically not cheaper. It has to be like an entire house worth. It has to be like an entire like container, essentially like a 40-foot container. Oh, thank you, Momo. Thank you very much. And thank you guys for liking the live and the shares and the gifts and all of that. Thank you. Thanks for the heart me's. Looks like we got a. Guess it's telling me that there's been 6 heart me's. So thank you for the heart me's. Let's see. All right. Anything else from you guys? Oh, that's only TikTok. Yeah, that's only TikTok. Anything else from any of you guys? Late in Texas. Take care. See you next time. Take care in paradise. I appreciate that. I will see you next time. I'm here every day at around this time. We have been here for 3 hours and 9 minutes and 45 seconds. So, any other questions? If not, my son just woke up, as you guys heard. He's already over at the pool. 19 months. He swims like a champ. He swims better than me. I sink, but he swims pretty well. But but yeah, we've been here for 3 hours, 10 minutes, and 10 seconds now. Any other questions? I'm here to answer them. If not, I'll see you again tomorrow at around the same time. I do see the consultations coming in. Thanks, you guys who have booked consultations. If you're still in here, I am getting those notifications. I'm just not looking at them because I'm live, but I do see you guys booking consultations. So thank you for that. And we will talk to you soon. You're most welcome. All right. If you are typing a question right now, just go ahead and hit enter, and I will wait for you to go ahead and complete that thought. If you're about to ask a question, just type one, and I will wait for you to go ahead and get that question out. And if not, then we will call it a day, and I will see you guys tomorrow. All right. Looks like you guys have no more questions. So I'm going to go play with my son. You guys make today your best day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.